Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Brother 22 post-season Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today to talk about everything Big Brother 22, All-Stars 2, in the postseason. We're going to wrap everything up in a nice little bow. We're going to rate all the players. We're going to talk about their legacies. We're going to talk about the season. We've had time to digest, and I am, of course, here with Melissa. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing great. It's going to be interesting. I was telling Taran earlier, it's going to be interesting to try and kind of rate these players this year, just because normally we base it off of like, how do we think they would do if placed on another season? But now it's like, okay, well, we've already seen them on a few seasons. So we've seen what they can do, but it'll be interesting to see if we all agree as to like how good they are on the grand scale. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, and of course, also with me here is Brent. How you doing, Brent?
I'm doing good. I think it's unlikely that we will all agree on everything. We never do, but that's no fun if we all agree, right? I'm really excited to wrap up the season and talk to you guys. It's been a minute since we've been here, and some stuff has gone down. Some people have had some stuff to say since they left the house, Taran.
Oh boy. Well, we're gonna get into all of it here as we wrap up the season. It was a season. It happened. I mean, really, back in whatever May or whenever it was. There was a lot of talk about, is there going to be a season? Big Brother Canada 8 was canceled mid-season, and we were really like, is there even going to be a season? And then, lo and behold, there was a season, and it was an all-star season. And how exciting was that, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most exciting part of the entire thing was the preseason, when the rumors were flying and everyone was, getting excited to see who was going to be on. And even honestly, like the first episode, I thought the first episode, seeing all these people back again on my TV, that was super exciting. So, that was a big surprise. Honestly, I did not expect to see a season, let alone an all-star season.
I agree with Melissa on this one. I think that the preseason was a lot of fun. I particularly had a lot of fun in the preseason. For those of you who don't remember, I was trying to spoil cast members left and right. And I would like to say that I did a pretty good job. I didn't get everything exactly right. I had a few misses here and there. And in fairness, there were a couple people who had last-minute withdrawals who I know were on the cast. But the people that replaced them were fun surprises in Keisha and Memphis. But overall, like, it was a lot of fun preseason, and I got into my first fight with Evil Dick and my last fight with Evil Dick. So that's always something to talk about too.
Yeah, apparently I got in a fight with him too because he blocked me. I didn't even know.
It happens. Yeah. Well, that brought us into the second All-Star season of Big Brother's history, existence in the U.S. here, and it's something that the fans had clamored for a long time. Expectations were high. The cast was surprisingly not that bad. I mean, considering,
the cast was good.
Yeah, considering what we were expecting.
The cast was good. Okay, I don't. When you go back to the beginning of the season and they said, voila, these are the people that are going to be on Big Brother 22 All-Stars. Bitch, I was excited. I mean, there were so many like fan service, fanboy castings that I really loved, like Keisha and Memphis and Kevin Campbell, people that I never thought would be on my screen again, that only we would talk about on our, lonely roundtables with a couple thousand followers in the middle of the night sometimes. Like, I really never thought they would come back. And then they brought them back. And I was like, wow. Now, there were a couple duds too, but that's okay. I'm okay with a couple duds as long as we get the good stuff, and we got the gold. It's just that the order of the boot list was just, it could not have been worse. It was like Survivor All-Stars Redux.
The one thing I do have to say is like I do like kind of disagree with you guys on this one. Okay. Just because like I think that it's an interesting cast. I think there were a lot of surprises on the cast, which was fun. But I don't think that I would consider this cast an all-star cast for me. Like if they had, and I know this is semantics and I get it. And I know that people like this has been discussed ad nauseum in the preseason, but like, I wouldn't have called this an all-stars. I would have called it like a second chances or whatever, like third chances, whatever you want to call it, or like, you know, something to prove, like Big Brother, something to prove. I don't know. I just felt like everybody there had like a story that they were trying to like reverse or combat, like from their first season, or whatever season that they played, whether it's like people don't respect their game, and they want to, you know, prove that their game should be respected, or like, you know, they just barely lost, or they, you know, made the wrong choice, or whatever it was. And then, you know, yeah, Lone Ranger is right in the chat that it should be called like Big Brother Redemption or something like that, because it's like there were a lot of very interesting storylines that was like, are the mistakes of their past going to come back and haunt them, or are they doomed to repeat it, you know, that sort of thing. But it just, to me, like, I don't think you can call it an all-star season unless you have the all-stars playing, like the best of the best. So, and I know this is semantics, so, you know, I get it. But to me, the cast was not the kind of cast that I was hoping to see. It was an interesting cast, but it was not the cast that I was hoping for. Nonetheless, starting of the season, I was super excited, very excited to see how everyone was going to play, and how they were going to interact together. And I do agree with Brent in that is where the real disappointment started to set in.
Yes. Well, right away we saw that Cody won the first HOH, and then that was basically the season, as he then just
thank you, everybody. Yes,
walked down the stairs.
Yeah, and he just won
into confetti. But along the way, we had to get through some of these all-stars, and you know, it really, I think the big headlines from the season at this point are going to be Cody cutting Nicole at the end of the game, Cody playing perhaps the most dominant game we've ever seen in Big Brother, and then just in general, some of the highlights, you know, seeing Devon, seeing Keisha. That wasn't really a highlight for most people, but it was a highlight for me. I don't care what anyone says. Seeing Kaser and Janelle, these were, you know, big moments. And the start of the season was definitely huge. I mean, I think from my perspective, the engagement that we had in the first month of the show was the most we've ever had since covering Big Brother. And then in the last month of the show, it was some of the least engagement we've seen in the history of us covering Big Brother. So a season of dichotomy there, even though it was relatively even throughout.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, look, the most fun I've had on an episode, I think Melissa and I talked about this with you, Taran, that like the first episode of the season, when you know, they all got to meet each other, and then, you know, Devon's veto win, and then the finale. I mean, like, there were like 3 big plot points as far as like, you know, drama for the season, and when you were really feeling Big Brother. And aside from that, it was just a slow march to the end by Cody. You know, listening to Kevin Campbell on Instagram, you wonder, like, you know, if certain people have been in the house, like what might have changed about, you know, particularly Cody winning, the alliance that formed, all things like that. But, you know, them's the breaks, and this is the way it happened, and we had to just sit there and watch it.
Yeah. Well, that was the season. I don't think we need to get in too much into like the story throughout the season, because as I said, it was really, you know, Cody took control. He created a power structure. There were a couple of other players that were in there with a shot. Nicole with this kind of, you know, typically snaky sort of gameplay. You had Memphis with his wise guys and committee, sort of grumpy guy gameplay. You had Tyler in there, who was just up and down. You had Deni planting seeds left and right. You had Enzo going, "That's it, yo," you know, just being a social player, and many of these people making it to the end of the game. But Cody really, as the creator of that structure, taking the full benefit of it and ultimately taking the win unanimously for the first time in a regular season since Dan Giesling, and the first time ever with a 9-person jury. Although I think there's some interesting arguments to be had about, is it easier to win unanimously in a 9-person jury or a 7-person jury? I actually think that's not quite as, easy an answer as you might think. But here it is. Cody as the winner of Big Brother 22 All-Stars 2. We've had 2 weeks now-ish to let this set in. How do you feel about it, Brent?
I mean, I feel good. I am a big believer in sticking the landing, and Big Brother 22 stuck the landing. It didn't give me much along the way. We got a few fun times together, not a lot, but a few, and then we got that gag-worthy moment at the end of Cody cutting Nicole and her never seen it coming. I mean, that was worth the price of admission. It really was. For me to sit through that entire season, these boring ass feeds that we've been putting up with all season long, for me to see that, because there are a lot of people in reality television that fans, and I'm one of them, think needed to get their comeuppance, that we just didn't think that they deserved some of the stuff that they've gotten, and they needed to be taken down a peg or two. And she's one of them. And it was really fun to watch her have to end up on the short end of the stick and not realize that, oh God, I'm about to be outplayed here. He's going to evict me. And the best part was that they went to commercial break. So you saw it coming, and you saw it building, and it wasn't just like a, boom and it was over kind of thing. It was definitely a good 2-3 minute orgasm that we got to experience together as fans of reality television. And so I think that I feel good. And then listening to the people after the season, I feel better. I feel like that everybody's heart, for the most part, there's a couple exceptions, I think their hearts were in the right place. And some of them, I feel like, do understand and did understand at the time what was happening. It's just they could never get power. They could never have someone on their side of things win power. People like Kevin and Davon were desperate for somebody like Janelle or Kaser or anybody that would screw up the system to win. They wanted them to win, or so that this wouldn't happen, but it never happened. So then when you see that the new HOH is, Nicole or Christmas or Memphis, then you have to play the game. You have to play the game to save your ass. And unfortunately, that's what we saw. We saw people saving their ass all season long. We never saw aggressive gameplay because the power in the house never changed. And there's just nothing we can do about that. Maybe next year we'll have better luck, but I just feel like we got some bad luck this year. And you know what? Bad luck happens.
Bad luck does happen. It does happen. Well, I asked the audience how they felt about Cody. Now, Cody as a winner. Where does Cody rank as a winner? Now, in the past, I've kind of just put top tier, middle tier, bottom, whatever. I wanted to be a little more specific this time. So I asked, is he the new best player, the new GOAT? Is he in the God tier? Is he in the Dan, Will, Derek? Is he there? Is he in the top tier, middle tier, bottom tier, or is he the worst winner we've ever seen? And the audience, by a pretty large margin, have him solidly top tier. They don't have him up with Dan, Will, maybe Derek. They don't have him as the best, although I will say 25% of people did put in the God tier, but over 50% of people said top tier. So it's sort of on the edge there. It's not there, but it's approaching that level, which I think is pretty fair here, Melissa.
Yeah, I would say top tier as well. I absolutely think that Cody's win was deserved, and I think he played a great game. However, this is his second season. He does have relationships outside of the game that I do believe influence the game a bit. Whether or not they're, pre-game alliances or anything like that, we don't know. But at least these relationships were formed prior to the season, and I'm sure that they had an influence. However, some people in the house probably also had pregame relationships and they didn't win. So I do think that Cody played a top tier game. However, I don't think that he's in the same tier as, Dr. Will or Dan or Derek at this point. So, but honestly, I really did appreciate his gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm interested to do at some point in the off season is that sometime like 4 years ago, I believe it was after Steve won. We did a winner rankings podcast, and it has been quite a while since we did that. And I think it's time to update the winner rankings podcast. And one of the things I'm definitely interested in looking at is Cody versus Derek, Cody versus Andy. Throw in whoever else you want in there in that sort of range. I think there are some very interesting things to talk about there. We can touch on them here, of course, but I definitely want to do an update to the winner rankings. We can, of course, also include Big Brother Canada, similar to how we did it in the season rankings, because that would be interesting as well. But I can tell you that I had an optional question here. If you wanted to, where exactly would you place Cody in the list of the 21 winners? Because we're not counting the first winner or the first season. And the audience placed Cody. Where would you guess? Where would you guess the audience placed Cody on average here?
6, 7.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they placed him number 6. I think that it goes something like Will, Dan, Derek, Andy.
I also think June. Like,
no,
I think
actually, you know what? I take that back. I think it's number 5. I think it's 5. I think it's top 5. I think it's Will, Dan, Derek, Andy, and then Cody.
I think there are some, like, I think it's like there are some people that could rank certain people in that top tier, and I think that might even out to end up pushing Cody down a bit.
Oh yeah, you're actually, you know what? If it's an average, like I don't think anybody would actually put Cody above 5.
Yeah, did you do the average, or did you do what number was picked the most?
I'm gonna pick the one that's the whatever it's called, the
mode.
The mode.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so then that might be that
might be the mode. That might be 5 if you did the mode. Yeah.
You are correct. Number 5.
Yes.
And to be clear, this was just pick a number. This was not rank all the winners, because none of the winners are relevant to this season except for Cody. So number 5 was the pick here, although very close to being number 4, actually.
Do you know what it would be if it was the average?
The average was like 6.
Yeah.
Because there's so many numbers down below.
Brent and I were right.
Yeah. So, but 19% said 4th place. 19.1% said 5th place.
Oh, wow.
So
that's about right.
Yeah.
Wow.
12% said number 3. So
I mean, it was a mighty game. Let's be honest. It was a sterling game. It didn't have any of the panache that these other winners have. That I feel like for most people puts them up there in the echelon of Big Brother. You know,
I also think for me, like, it does take away a bit that this is his second time playing. I think that certainly influences where I put him in the rankings. And additionally, I do think that so say for example, pretend Dan didn't win his first season, but won Big Brother 14, with Dan's funeral and with all of that. Like, I do think I would rank Dan higher than Cody even in that instance, just because like he showed that he could come from behind and pull himself, forward in that situation. Whereas I don't know if I could see Cody doing the same thing. And not only that, like, he didn't have to do the same thing. So I do think that like I would take that win as a lower tier win than Dan winning Big Brother 14 and not winning Big Brother 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there are a few interesting things here. So if you do the math there, that's about 50% of the audience thinks in the range of 3, 4, 5. And then that's a pretty significant portion of the audience in that range. I agree. I think that there's some interesting things about Cody's win. First is that it was his second try. That is definitely worth noting, especially when it comes to comparing him to Derek, especially because he lost to Derek on his first try. Number 2 is that I think one of the reasons why he isn't as compelling a winner as somebody like Dan or even Derek to a degree is one of the reasons why I then might think about him as, boosting him back up, which is that I think that Cody might be the most well-rounded player ever. I mean, the thing that makes Dan and Will and even Derek to a degree so exciting is that they have flaws in their game that they need to make up for, mainly that they don't win many competitions. But Cody, he has the social game, he's strategic, and he also wins those competitions. He had such a well-rounded game. There was nothing to make up for, nothing to pull himself out of, because there were no weaknesses to make an exciting show. To like, when we see Will, you know, not winning and getting his way, but convincing people to do what he wants when he doesn't win, that's exciting because he's making up for a flaw in his game. When we see Dan pull himself out of scrapes and whatever, like Dan is a charming guy. I wouldn't say quite as charming as Cody potentially, but Dan gets around that in other ways. And he's not the worst competitor, but he's also not the best competitor. And so Dan has to use these other things. Derek also not the best competitor in the world. He has other flaws that he has to make up for. He's not as young and good looking and charming as Cody is. So he has to make up for those things with the way he plays the game. But Cody is just like, you know, on his stats page, it's just a 10 everywhere. And so there's no climb, and that's not fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And I do think that maybe I am putting too much emphasis on like overcoming adversity, making a good winner. Maybe it is just a situation where like, if you don't have to set yourself up to overcome adversity, then maybe that makes a better winner. I don't know. But, you know, I guess like if I'm just being honest with myself, like I look at Dan and Derek and I look at, you know, Dr. Will, and I do see them in a different tier than Cody, just because I don't know. I just feel like I see the strategy there more, probably because they've had to overcome adversity. I've had to watch them create that strategy for themselves versus Cody, who never really had to deal with anything like that. Like, we don't know what would have happened had somebody from the other side won HOH and been like, I'm going to target Cody, and maybe people go along with it, and maybe Cody has to figure out a way to get around it. And we never had to see that. So I don't know what that looks like. And I think that's part of, I think like the absence of that information is kind of making me rank him lower, just because I don't know what his full skill set is.
Yeah, everybody who I think is in like the top 4 for me, they all had points in time where they had to really work hard to get their way. They really had to pull a rabbit out of the hat. And Cody never had to do that. So is he capable of pulling a rabbit out of the hat? I think he probably is. It's just that I haven't seen any evidence of it with my own eyes, and thus I'm ranking him essentially below everybody else because he was never in any trouble and didn't have the opportunity to show me his work. Essentially, it's like in math class when you can't just get, Cody's the kind of guy who like just comes up with the right answer, but I want to see you do your work. And I never really got to see him do his work. I only got to see him do part of it.
Well, see, I would say I think I'd be maybe like I'm with you, Melissa. I'm like halfway with you, Brent. Where like
sounds about right.
I agree. Like you can be the most well-rounded player, but you still sometimes you get unlucky, and sometimes you still have to face adversity, and that's what we didn't see. We never saw Cody get unlucky, but I do think he showed his work, and I do think he pulled some rabbits out of some hats. You know, one being like getting Enzo to vote to keep Nicole. That was work that we saw Cody do weeks in advance. Prior to that, Enzo really wanted Nicole gone. Cody put in the work to make sure Enzo wanted Nicole to stay. We saw the work that he put in with Deni. Even though he never trusted her, he got Deni to put up Ian that week, which cut Nicole off. Like, we saw him put in the work to make these things happen, to stack the deck in his favor. We just never saw him have to overcome a bad a bad pull from the deck, right? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, and I think that this is something we've talked about all season long, and we've brought in, you know, the comparison to Dane, where like prior to Dane literally just like performing a magic trick and saving himself, I wasn't so sold on like the Dane is an amazing player kind of thing, like narrative that people were saying, because I was like, well, you know, like he's got the pretty boys and like he hasn't really had to do anything. So like, I don't know. But then, you know, when he turns it all when he's like out the door, literally like 1 foot out the door, and he turns it around and finds a way to save himself. That's something that shows me that he is a great player, and he does have like a serious strategy behind it, because he's not just relying on his alliance to kind of carry him forward. He actually is able to do stuff on his own when confronted with an issue. And and that totally changed my opinion on Dane. And I feel like if we had seen something similar from Cody, I would have, maybe I'd be, ranking him way higher than I already am. I mean, I'm already ranking him high, but I do think that that's something that's important to me, because it shows skill to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I also think that the chat also brings up a fair point, which was, we keep saying that, Cody never had to face a bad pull from the deck, but he kind of did with the wall yellers.
The wall yellers, yeah.
I mean, fair. I can't imagine what I would do if I was playing Big Brother and I had like lockdown control of the game and felt really good about my position, and some Yahoo from outside who like has hated me for years. And actually, let me look at that. There's a list of people, so you never know. But one of those people,
it would be a crowd, Brent.
Something. Yeah, right. Yeah, so
they wouldn't need a megaphone.
The crowd outside. They don't need the
crowd outside yelling. There's so many people. They've stormed the CBS lot.
Anyway, the point being, I don't know what I would do if my work was undone by somebody from the outside, and like he had to face that, and that was a big deal in the house for a while. So at least there's that. Okay.
The only thing is that all the previous players are saying like, well, wall yellers don't affect anything, and nobody really cares about them or listens to them. So like, it does take away a little bit, just because like, if nobody's listening to it and nobody cares about it, and they're just going to like brush it aside. And that's something that's known by like past players, that is it's not like, oh no, what's he going to do now? Like we all thought that, but all the past players were like, yeah, no one cares about these stupid wall yellers.
Well, yeah. So it's something that, and this is, I think, one of the things that I was saying at the time, which is that the players in power, the good players, they're the ones that are going to be able to spin this however they want. The players who aren't able to do that, like we saw a couple of things happen with the wall yellers, right? We saw Cody and Nicole are running the game. That was bad for Cody and Nicole, but they were able to pretty much gloss it over. Nobody really cared all that much because of the work that they had put in. We also saw that Tyler and Christmas have a final two was yelled, and that was very detrimental to Tyler and Christmas's game. It really was something that outed that final two. The people in power were able to control those lines of communication, make sure that was accepted as truth, and it was used as a way to keep the two of them down and to prevent them from being together and continuing to bond, and was one of the bigger detriments, I think, to Tyler's game ultimately. And I think that's not super fair to Tyler, but Cody was able to bounce back from it because he had power in the game, and he was able to adapt to it in the game, whereas Tyler was not. He was not in a position to, and he was not skilled enough to overcome it from his position.
Yeah, I agree. But it still was a little boring to watch along the way. And it's like, it was an all-star season. And so we wanted a little bit more than, a few wall yellers from the outside causing a little commotion, and people in the house being able to spin their magic any way we wanted it. It's like, the only reason I was so excited about the wall yellers was because the game itself was so boring, but that's because Cody made it that way, and Cody and his alliance. Like I want to give credit to other people too. It wasn't just Cody, but Cody did a good job of shaping the narrative of the season.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, has there been any updates that we need to talk about since the season ended? Have we heard anything interesting? I usually look to Brent for this because he loves the drama. What do we need to know? Any information?
Nicole, as many of you probably know, decided to make a big show of it and unfollow all of her friends from previously in Big Brother history, meaning like Derek from, the champion of Big Brother 16, and Cody's girlfriend, and Deni, and basically anybody who might have crossed her. In fact, some of these people I don't even think crossed her, which is odd, but she's unfollowed them all on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. And she said that I was sort of hoping that she would do it beforehand so we could listen to it on her Coco Caliente podcast. She's going to reveal her feelings about Big Brother, but as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, that hasn't happened yet. I think she was going to do it this week, and it hasn't come out yet. I've been waiting with hand and foot, trying to wait for the Coco Caliente podcast to come
Brent,
out. So, yes.
you might not have to wait that long.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning should be dropping. I did
course.
talk to Nicole.
What?
did.
Oh, you talked?
I talked to Nicole, yes.
You talked to Nicole. So are you on the Coco Caliente podcast?
No, she was on the Me podcast.
Oh, on the You
Who's on the
podcast.
podcast.
I like saying that. Coco Caliente. Coco Caliente.
Yes, we went over her game. It was a little over 2 hours long.
Ooh, yeah, I'm so
it's
glad she did that.
primarily focused on her game, but she definitely talks about her feelings on Big Brother and all of that as well.
Okay, I'm
so.
very excited for that.
Can you give us a
feel like
teaser?
those podcasts always make me totally reevaluate or totally respect in a different way these people's games. I just remember when Paris had hers, and I just felt like so much more respect for Paris after that. And I just love when they go over their game in such detail, especially because you like to take it week to week. So I like, hearing like, okay, this week we did this. Okay, what were you thinking there? I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. And just so you know, because I know people say, oh, I don't listen to that, honey. They listen. Like somebody, and their fans will tell them stuff. So like Nicole, yes, I was rooting for your comeuppance, but you played fabulously this season. Like it was a wonderful game to watch. Like if I ever doubted Nicole,
no, if anybody thought that Big Brother 18 was a fluke, well, you're wrong. Like it's not.
Yeah, there was no guy here.
Good.
Yeah, there was no guy she was hanging on with or hanging out in bed with here. It was all on her own, and she almost won the game, guys. She almost won the game. If she gets to the final two, if she doesn't miss that question in the end, and it gets to a tiebreaker, and she takes Cody to the end, I think Cody still wins, but it's like 5-4, or sorry, I forget how many people are in the jury. I forget. Yeah, 5-4, 6-3. There's a non-zero chance that she wins the game. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she needed to cut Cody, but I mean, she was close. I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk about with Nicole when we go to rate her as a player is that I do feel like she's a player that learns. Similar to Cody, who clearly learned from his first time. I feel like she's gotten better every time she's come back, and she learns from her previous experiences. And I think she never had the opportunity to learn that you need to cut the person at the end of the game, because that never was a problem for her. And when I talked to her after Big Brother 18 to recap her game then, she told me, I was willing to take Corey. I was willing to take Paul over the people I thought I could beat even more. And at the time I was like, well, I mean, I'm not going to tell you I think that's really, a bad move. But maybe I should have. Maybe
I feel like
if I had impressed upon her, hey, that's not the best move necessarily. But I do think that she, she is somebody that probably would come back if she came back, which I don't think she will. But if she did ever play again, which is what we're kind of talking about when we rate her as a player, that I do think she would learn from that, and she wouldn't make that same mistake again in the future. And that's one of the interesting things about Nicole.
So can I ask just really quickly as a tease? So does she address the decision to unfollow some of these people? And does she and I hope specifically you also really asked her, why did she let Ian go that week? Why? Because that was her game right there.
I mean, well, see, that's a question, but from my perspective, she tried about as hard as she could before. In fact, I think she tried too hard because she wasn't getting anywhere. I was like, you were damaging your game that week by trying as hard as you did before you finally backed off. And then I questioned her about the validity of the ultimate strategy of trying to blame the vote, whether it was necessary, what kind of jury management that had for her. But we also talked about the decision to take Cody over Enzo, if that was going to happen. She definitely feels kind of frustrated. She really thought she would have some kind of a chance, and that the jury might have respected the decision to take Cody over Enzo. One of the things she was really worried about, not to spoil too much, is that Devon early on in the feed said that if her or Paul had taken James would have beaten both of them in 18, and that really got in her head about Enzo is James. And so, and I mean, Enzo's, is a better player than James, so it's especially scary. But yes, a lot of things to talk about. I don't think we like directly addressed like unfollowing people, but she talked about her feelings about the Big Brother community and the people that she sort of feels like she's sort of understood who's got her back and who doesn't, and that she's gonna just kind of like leave certain things at the door. So
was there any indication that she'd be interested in that she would have been interested or entertain the idea of taking Christmas?
I mean, I didn't ask her about taking Christmas because it wasn't really an option for her. I assume that if it came down to that, she would have been a lot more open to taking Christmas than Enzo. But I did not ask her that specifically. But that's
like if she wins veto at Final Four,
right?
Can she get rid of Cody and take Christmas with her?
Oh, I don't.
Like, yeah, like, would that have ever been something? Well, would it have ever been something that because I just remember her and Christmas having conversations where Christmas and Nicole both indicated, like, oh, I'll take you. I was wondering if any of that could have been legit, because I was always thinking, like, that would actually be good for Nicole if she were to take Christmas, because I don't see Christmas winning over Nicole.
I mean, I think that Christmas was her second choice. After Cody, if Cody's not there, she'll take Christmas 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling the chat, like, sometimes I ask you questions that I know the answer to. Like, I know that Nicole is not gonna cut Cody there and take Christmas, but I'm just like, I'm asking it like in a way, like, did she address that? Was there ever a point in time where she considered that? Like, do I think she would have done it? No, I know. I watched the season. She wasn't gonna do it, but I was hoping, like, I guess I would feel better if there was a part of her that was like, oh, I might have considered that had I won the veto. If I'd won the veto at 4, I might have had to consider that.
I think she would have considered it, but I don't think she would have done it. And she said if she had won the final 3 HOH, she would have considered cutting Cody at that point, but she thinks she would have kept Cody. Hear about all that and more. It should be dropping tomorrow.
Good job, Taran.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also, by the way, I just want to take credit as well, because I feel like the fact that I'm a little messy sometimes makes Taran look so angelic and nice in comparison, and people want to go talk to him. You see, so y'all should thank me.
It really helps. Notably,
yeah,
though,
I'm sure it helps.
Notably, though, I don't. When I reach out to people, I don't say, "Yeah, I'm the guy that podcasts with Brent." That's me. Remember me?
Yeah, probably best to leave Brent out of it.
With Melissa and Brent. Oh gosh! All right.
All right. Well, anything else from the post? One of the things that I learned was that we spoke to Devon on finale night, and she told us that she felt like there was a chance that Nicole could have won if Cody had taken her to the end, or if she had taken Cody to the end, based on what she was hearing in the jury house. Then we heard from Kevin and a few of the other jurors, who basically said, no. There was no chance unless she cuts Cody. She was not going to get our votes. But we did kind of like try to speak up about her game at times, and we were shut down every time by specific people. I think we saw some of that happen in the jury segments. But what it seems like happened is that there were kind of maybe 2 factions in the jury. One that consisted of like Devon, Deni, and Ian, who were very close. And then another that was like David and Kevin, and like they were tight with Tyler a bit. But there was drama between Kevin and Devon that caused a lot of caused not enough communication between the 2 sides, and perhaps that's why Devon was kind of under the assumption that since they were kind of speaking up for Nicole's game at times, that maybe they would have been votes for Nicole. But while in fact what they were saying to each other is that no, not unless she cuts Cody, at which point maybe Nicole over Enzo or something like that, but that Nicole did not really have much of a chance against Cody, no matter how it happens.
Sounds right to me.
All right. Anything else? There's no. They didn't like go and party here, so there's no party drama to speak of.
Yeah, there's no part. Well, I think we can thank COVID for that. I think just watching the interviews from a couple of the contestants, Devon was obviously thrilled for America's favorite player. It was just nice to see some happiness and some sheer joy on someone's face. And any of the interviews that Devon did, she was just so appreciative and so thankful for her fans getting it done. And y'all did get it done. We did it. I was voting for Devon. And I love that. I think Enzo's interview with RHAP was a lot of fun as well. Like listening to him, like it's nice to see that, I gave credit to Cody for some things that I saw Cody do some things and then Taran would bring it up on the podcast and we would talk about it. And then Cody brought it up in the post show. Like he would bring it up in the interviews. And it was so great. I'm like, oh God, like that's good that you can actually articulate like what we're seeing. Like it's not just something you're accidentally doing. You're actually thinking about the fact that you're making these specific moves.
It's pretty rare
Enzo
that
as
happens.
Well. Huh?
It's pretty rare that happens.
Right? Exactly. Which I was like, oh, I was so excited about it when I heard him say certain things. Enzo as well. Like he was always thinking about the game. It wasn't just like he was being like the hype man. Like he was thinking about, okay, maybe I do need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. Was he a little bit scaredy cat sometimes? And, maybe a little bit unwilling to pull the trigger? Yes. But he also makes a fair point. Like, he put himself in position, and I think there are a lot of people, and Taran included, who don't disagree with him on the move to keep Nicole in the triple eviction. And Enzo has thought about it and said, maybe that was the move that I needed to make to win the game. Maybe if I get rid of Nicole there, then something happens with Cody, and then that's how I win the game. Because obviously he's seen that he couldn't beat Cody at the end. He had no chance whatsoever. I think the fact that it was 9-0 was a big slap upside the head, where he was like, oh God, I really should have gotten rid of this guy sometime before. But he didn't. And so he was forced to reevaluate, well, wait, maybe if I did something different, something would have happened. But he's like, look, I got to the end, I got second place, and I got to give my speech, and I was okay with that. I guess I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. All right. I did ask the audience some other questions as well about some of these players. I wanted them to rank the players from their favorite to their least favorite. Now that the season was over, all of the players. I thought this was interesting because it's not super representative of anything. But I'm curious to know where you guys think, who is the number one favorite player from the season from our audience?
From our audience.
I think they would probably say Devon.
I think
Or
Devon.
maybe Janelle.
Oh, I think Devon.
You're both wrong.
What?
Tyler.
Still wrong. It's Kaser.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Kaser took the top spot. I was surprised.
Okay.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, which player ratings, not
Good
that
for
high.
Kaser.
Legacy ratings, certainly not first place, but favorite player ratings, he's there, and I'm all about that. Just below Kaser is Janelle, number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So this was interesting to me because all of the players are listed in the in America's Favorite Player poll. The difference between this and the America's Favorite Player poll is that the America's Favorite Player poll, you only get to choose one. You're voting for one person. This was a ranking. And so I think that's really going to help somebody like Kaser, who is very not polarizing. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Kaser, everybody loves Kaser, except for the few people that are gonna be like, hey, no, I don't like Kaser. And to you people, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
But even Janelle, I think, especially toward the end, started to have some detractors. And so I think somebody like Kaser really is able to nail that top spot. Then the next two are Tyler and Devon in that order. Tyler above Devon, even though Devon was above Tyler in the America's Favorite Player rankings. But those are the top 4. Number 5 was Enzo. Number 6 was Ian. Number 7 was Cody. And then there's a bit of a drop off. But those were the top players. Bailey rounding out the 8th place in the top half. And then, man, who is number 16? Who's last on this list, Melissa?
Right?
Nicole A, maybe?
Do you agree, Brent?
I don't necessarily agree.
Just because like she left on like a bad note, I guess, in terms of the fans. I mean, after the fact, I don't know, but maybe that stuck in people's minds and didn't. I don't know.
It's definitely
Maybe
possible.
Christmas.
It's Christmas. It's
Oh, it's
Christmas.
Christmas.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. The chat had it. Yeah.
Now, I did this poll in the preseason, and in the preseason, it had some interesting results when you compare it to the postseason here. In the preseason, when I asked you to rank the players from your favorite to your least favorite, number 1 was not even in the top 8 in the postseason. Number 1 was Deni.
Yeesh.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeesh. That's
Yeah.
a fall. Poor
From
Deni.
1st to 9th in the
Oof.
postseason.
You know,
Yeah, see, that would be interesting. Okay, wait, yeah. Can you go through and tell us where they've either like gone up or down?
Sure.
Well,
I mean, that
Go
might
ahead,
be a
Brent.
lot, but
We're
I
talking
just am
about-
interested in it.
just about Dani, like, you know, like I was so excited to have Dani back. We all were. Like, I don't know anybody who wasn't excited to see Dani Briones back on Big Brother. Like, I mean, like she was like so amazing on her original season, and then she was so amazing more like on her return in 13. And yeah, she just played the game the way she wanted to play it. I'll say this, to her credit, I feel like Dani knew that she was playing a game that was not necessarily viewer friendly this time. It wasn't fan friendly. She knew that they were not going to be liked by the audience because they constantly got their way. So I like when players understand that, at least it's easier for me to digest what they're giving me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Well, in second place in the preseason was Janelle. So Janelle actually just stayed in second place. Tyler was in third place in the preseason, so he stayed in third place into the
Wow.
postseason.
Very consistent.
Yeah. Ian was fourth place. So Ian dropped down to sixth place overall. A bit of a drop there for Ian. Then we had Devon in fifth, so she actually went up a rank to fourth place. Then we had Kaser in sixth place, who moved up to number
jumped.
1. Yeah, big jump for
Wow, good
Kaser.
for him.
Then Nicole Anthony was in seventh place. She is gonna take a drop to 15th.
Oof.
A bit of a tumble there.
Not great.
Yeesh.
Then Keisha was in 8th place. She fell to this is 12th place.
Why did you have trouble
No,
saying
it was
that?
13th.
Oh, you're trying to like.
I'm
you must
doing
not have it-
backwards math.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh.
like you must be doing it in your head like that's the way. Because you're like.
They're not actually numbered.
Yeah, I could tell that.
What?
Yeah, that was obvious.
Then Cody was in 9th place, so he actually moved up two spots to 7th place. Then we had Kevin Campbell in 10th place, and he fell to 12th overall.
Unbelievable.
Enzo in 11th moved
Wow,
up
surprised
to
he's so low.
5th.
Yeah, I was gonna
Good for
say,
him. I'm
big
surprised
jump.
he was that low.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Nicole was in 12th. She fell to 14th. This Franzel. Memphis.
I'm surprised about that. I feel like she would have started off lower and gotten higher after the season. I don't know. Maybe
I think
it's
people
just
have
me.
greater respect for her game, but she's also somebody that like she's been there for a lot. Like she's still fresh in people's minds. She's a lot of people are still talking about her. When you think about who do I want to drag down, you're still thinking about Nicole Franzel more so, I think, than anyone else. Memphis was in 13th place, and he moved up to 10th. David was there in 14th place, and he moved up to 11th. Interesting. Memphis and David were back to back in both polls. They both moved up. Then Bailey was actually 15th place in the preseason.
What?
Yeah, and jumped all
She
the way
really
up
moved
to
up.
8th place in the
Good
postseason.
for her.
Yeah, and then Christmas just stayed the same in the last place.
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, at least she didn't drop.
There it is. You got to look at the
Yeah.
silver linings.
That's pretty interesting, I think. To see where like people started and now like I do think that might influence the legacy watch in terms of whether or not people would still consider people top tier.
Well, before we get into the legacy watch, I also want to talk about who do we think could play again? Who is the most likely person to come back and play a third or fourth or even fifth time?
I think Devon, Janelle, and Kaser.
Okay, Brent, do you have picks here?
I think that's probably right.
Well, the audience thinks Devon, number one, by far. Number two, they think David.
I see. No, there's no way.
I don't think so.
No way. He was so boring. I'm sorry. He was so boring.
Yeah, look, like Tyler wouldn't come back. David wouldn't be asked back. And I think that Devon had said in her interviews that like she loves the game. She still loves the game. She'd come back in a heartbeat. And Janelle and Kaser, they said like, you know, we thought we were retired before, but you know, when you get that call, you kind of just make the choice. So I do think that the two of them would be likely to come back and also be likely to be asked back.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance. I think they like David.
No, Taran.
You don't know how many votes he got for
No,
AFP.
I'm not saying, look. I'm not saying they don't like him. I'm saying that, like,
They shouldn't like him.
I also don't see him saying he would want to come back. Has he said he wants to come back?
Oh, he would.
I think he would.
What's he
He
got
wanted to be
going
there more
on?
than anyone else.
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I think willingness is a huge aspect of this at this point. The audience said Cody was the third most likely to return.
I don't think Cody would come back unless it was like an all-winner season, because I feel like he wouldn't want to tarnish his like new legacy.
Well, you know, when we interviewed him on the finale night, I believe he said something along those lines of like, or it might not have been with us, it might have been with someone else, but like he was like, "I'm down. You point me at it."
Yeah, I don't know that
I'm
Cody
good.
cares that much about legacy. Maybe he
I don't
will
think he does.
now that he's out of the house, but we'll see. Yeah.
I mean, based on what I've seen, he's like, "Oh, stop it! Like Derek's obviously
Yeah.
better than me. Like, like I'm not. You know, I watched Dan and Will play. Like they're the greats. So I don't think he minds all that much. And it's money, and he's good at it. So
That's true. If you're looking at like his family, they like reality TV, so he'll probably want to go back.
yeah. Janelle was in fourth there. I think Janelle would come back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then before there's a drop off, Christmas, fifth place.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're
know.
wrong.
I don't
Yeah.
think they're wrong either. I think that Christmas would come back, and I think that they would actually ask her. And you know what? Christmas actually wasn't that boring. Like, I'd rather watch Christmas over David any day of the week. Sorry.
I do like how much Christmas like respects the game and like talks about how much she loves the game. Like maybe I don't remember whether or not she was a fan before she came on her season, but I do like the fact that I do feel like she has like reverence for the game and respect for it. So, you know, if you have a player like that, I'm fine with it as long as they respect the game.
Yeah. Danette in the chat said, as host? She coming back as the host? All right. Well, let's talk about the Legacy Watch. So the Legacy Watch is something that we've been doing all season long on
Which
Saturdays.
I've never got to participate
Well,
in.
here it is. We saved you for last here, Melissa.
It's great. I'm excited.
Yes. So what we do in the Legacy Watch, I'm going to bring it up on the screen if you're watching. If you're not, we will try our best to describe what is going on. This is the Legacy Watch. There are 6 tiers, and Legacy is whatever you want it to be. Usually some combination of gameplay, personality, likability, impact in the show, whatever it is, just their legacy as a player, as a character on the show. Here it is. It's whatever you define it to be. And here are the tiers. At the top, the Big Brother Pantheon, the gods of Big Brother, they go in there. In the past, Janelle has gone in there and then come out of it. She's gone up and down. What you're looking at right now is the standings from the preseason before anything changed. In the Pantheon, you will expect, and we did include some of these winners previously during the season, people like Dan and Will and Derek. Those are the people that are often included in the Pantheon, but there are other people that could get there as well. Then you have top tier. These are, best of the best kinds of players, but maybe not quite into the Pantheon, but they are about as high as you get without ascending to godhood. And then you have upper tier. These are just like good players. They're memorable. They're people that stand out to you, but they're not like the biggest characters in the world. Then you got middle tier, kind of your average. Stick them anywhere. They're fine. Maybe they're a good player but boring character. Maybe they're a great character but really bad player. However you want to define that. Then you've got the low tier where it's just like, what are they doing on the show? And then the bottom tier, which is somebody should be fired for casting this person. So in the preseason, before Big Brother 22 started, this is how these players were ranked. Christmas was in the bottom tier, followed by David in the low tier, with Bailey at the top of the low tier. Melissa, are you giving a face because you think that's too high for David?
Yeah, I mean, like, in terms of
should I remind you of your rating
whoa,
of David?
Whoa. To me, the Legacy Watch is very different from player rankings and
true.
rating. I think that the Legacy Watch for me is like the impact they've had on the game, like their position is the way that fans remember them and everything like that. So like, and also
he made an impact on you enough.
Whether or not they're beloved, things like that. To me, David, I thought would be a good player in the game, and I was impressed with his skills, but I do not think he made any sort of impact on the game or like on his, people remembering him. I mean, if he wasn't in the most recent season of Big Brother, I don't think that it would have even been a question. So I don't think Christmas belongs in the bottom without David. I think that there are other people who belong in the bottom tier with Christmas. Starting out. Now it could be all different because, it's the end of the season. But starting out, no way.
All right. Well, Bailey was at the top of the low tier. Then in the middle tier, you had Enzo at the bottom of the middle tier. Above Enzo was Nicole Anthony. Above Nicole Anthony was Davon at the top of the middle tier. Felt was pretty low at the time, or at least I did. Then in the upper tier, we had the majority of the players here. We had Memphis at the bottom of the upper tier. We had Kaser above him. Then Cody, Nicole Franzel, Kevin Campbell, and Keisha at the top of the upper tier. Then in top tier, we had Ian at the bottom of the top tier. We had Deni above Ian, Tyler above Deni, and Janelle at the top of the top tier. Nobody was in the Pantheon. Now,
that's shocking to me. Why is Janelle not in there? Why is Kaser not in there? Why at the time wasn't Deni in there or Tyler? Like, I feel like those guys should have been in there. I feel like Enzo should have been higher. Wow, everyone was really wrong on this one, guys. You guys did a very bad job, I have to say. It's bad.
Well, you're getting to look at it after the facts.
Well, no, but
you get to claim that you would have done something different.
No. Even if at the beginning of the season, when we talked about these people, like we all said that like Tyler was one of the best to never win and whatever. It's Janelle. Like we don't even need to discuss that one. Deni, we all were like thrilled that she was coming on. Like she had such a good previous 2 seasons. Like this is wrong. And it's unacceptable, really. So, I mean, I'd like to see where everyone is on these people now for sure. But, we have to understand that it's starting off at a wrong position.
Okay. Good to know. Well, here's how things changed over the course of the season. This is where everyone was placed in the Legacy Watch in the postseason. Down at the very bottom is David, who went down into the bottom tier at the bottom of the bottom tier. This is the opposite direction that I think David should have gone. If David was a bottom tier player to begin with, I think he should have gone up into low tier. I think I don't care if people say he was boring. I think he brought some of the most amount of entertainment on the season, and I think he is a character, and I do think he is a memorable character from the season personally.
I think that this is probably correct placement for David. I think that he brought entertainment, but in terms of like,
did he bring entertainment?
it was entertainment.
What was the entertainment that he brought?
Yes, I'm in a guy's
the
alliance.
entertainment is making
Tyler
his
and Cody
mistakes.
told me about you flipping on me.
But that's the thing
did you use your power on me? Did you save me?
I think that those things are all like, yes, like, oh, we're all groaning about how bad it is, but it's like that doesn't put him to me as like a higher place on the legacy watch.
He has an
I think
IQ of 187.
I think his legacy is bottom tier. And I think that if anything, like previously before the season, I would have thought good things about him just because I was like, okay, like we were like, just like you said earlier, like I thought he would be a good player. I thought that he had the reads, he had the, the drive, he had this and that, but really he was like they're saying in the chat, he was pretty clueless. And I do think he belongs on the bottom tier. I think that in terms of some entertainment he gave, he made a bunch of mistakes, and that was like interesting to watch because we're all like through our fingers, with our hands in front of our face. But I don't think that puts him in the low tier. I think he's bottom tier.
All right. Well, above David, just on the fringe, just on the precipice of dropping lower, Nicole Anthony at the bottom of the low tier. At the bottom of the low tier is Nicole Anthony. Christmas will be moving up above Nicole Anthony after we talk about Nicole. So she came close to dropping into that bottom tier, but she is here in the low tier.
I don't think she should. I mean, I guess if we're talking about like, if we're taking into account her previous game, I guess maybe that would put her above David, but I don't think that she did anything better than David this season. If anything, I think David did better than her. I think that she would belong in the bottom tier for me after this season.
Well, I do think, she at least has, she was America's favorite player. She was a very popular player in her first season. So this is a full accounting of their overall legacy. So I think that is what's helping her here. And I will tell you, she's not that far above David considering how much she had last season.
And like she understands the game too. Like David didn't even understand the game at times, Melissa.
But to me, in regards to like the legacy watch, it's like, what am I thinking of this person now? Like, it's like, to me, it's like, what impression are they leaving of me now? And after this season, I do feel like Nicole is a bottom tier player. She's probably very nice and everything like that. Yes. And she had a really good season, Big Brother 21. But after this season, it is leaving a different kind of taste in my mouth than it did Big Brother 21. So to me, if I'm thinking of her legacy, I am thinking of like a bottom tier player who like was totally wrong on everything and was betraying the people who were the only people who were like trying to work with her. So yeah, I would put her as bottom tier.
It's fair. I mean, that view is definitely fair. Is there like water running?
Yes, sorry, it's not water. It's cooking. Sorry.
Okay.
You're too loud, Dennis.
Melissa, podcasting from the kitchen still.
The kitchen is literally located right here with no door. So it's just like, it's not ideal for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. But this is where the best internet is. So it's really just a hole.
It's not water. It's cooking.
Yeah.
He's
All
trying
right.
to.
Well, above Nicole Anthony in the low tier is Christmas, who moves up from the bottom tier above both David and Nicole. Christmas improving her legacy. And I will say in the popularity poll also, she didn't lose by as much. So
okay. I love it. Like, I'd like to spend less time talking about the dregs here. So sorry.
I mean, I do think that I don't know if I would put Christmas as low tier. I feel like after both seasons, she's gone so far in both seasons.
Middle tier.
Yeah, I honestly would probably put her in the middle tier just because I do think that she wins competitions. She plays a certain style of game that doesn't win her the game is the problem. But I think in terms of like her legacy, I do think that people, at least for me, at least, I was so not happy with Christmas after her first season. Whereas this season, I feel better about her, honestly. Like, I feel like this season, I do feel like she was trying to have more agency and was trying to put herself in a good position. Whereas last season, she basically said, like, Paul, I want you to win. So this season, I do feel like I'm viewing her in a different light in terms of she maybe was aligning herself with people we didn't want her to be aligning with, and maybe, you know, had some blunders in terms of the fights that she was in and maybe some of the things she said. But I do think that, like, in terms of her game, I'm viewing her as a middle tier player versus a low tier or bottom tier player for sure.
All right. Well, something I'm thinking of now, let me know if you guys disagree. Why don't we just rate the players on their gameplay as we go through them in the Legacy Watch as well, since we'll already be talking about them. And then we won't have to go back through the list a second time. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then let me we'll go back and forth here. We'll pull up the stock watch page here. Here we go. This is it's a little cut off. That's fine.
It's okay. We know who's where.
Yeah, we know who's who. I'm Alyssa.
Taran's the top.
He's Aaron. And Brent is Rent.
All right. Well, let's just quickly rate some of these players here. We're starting with David. We'll talk about David, who was at the bottom tier legacy-wise. Brent says 2.
Yeah, it's a 2. Sorry. No, very, very little entertainment for me. Terrible gameplay. And I don't even think you understood what was happening most of the time. It's a 2.
Yes. Well, to be clear, what we're doing here.
Oh, okay.
Is we are rating.
Like, I already know.
We are rating them. So over the course of the season, we gave them ratings based on how they were doing that week. Their placement, their positioning, the gameplay up until that point. What we are doing now is rating them as players overall, meaning if they were to come back, how might we expect them to do again?
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. It's a 2.
He's like, oh, he erased that. Same score.
Yes. And if you put this person in 1,000 games as like a first time, maybe sometimes a second time player, how often would they win the game out of 10 being scored? And so David is a 2 from Brent, and after everything that I said, I agree he's a 2. I mean,
yeah,
not a great performance. I do give him a bit of a little bit of credit here because he is essentially a new player playing with a bunch of veterans who all had way more experience than him. I mean, most of these people have played for at least somewhere around 80 days, and he's played for basically 0. That's a significant disadvantage, and it's definitely going to make him look like he's not a good player. But he also wasn't a great player. He never really made any meaningful connections.
Right. I think the connection thing is huge.
Yeah, the people he did connect with, he burned them. Like,
right.
It just wasn't good.
I think that if he was someone who could make very good connections with people and was very social and everything like that, like maybe that could help carry him. But I think he has a problem with that. And then he also isn't very good at the strategy aspect of it or the competitions. Additionally, like, I don't see him improving in a new season. Like, for example, say you set him up next season and say, like, okay, David, you're entering the house. I don't see him doing anything to improve himself. In the meantime, he didn't watch any seasons to prepare himself. He didn't do any research. He basically just came in blind again. And I don't see him doing that if he's put on a future season. So I just feel like he would just keep going in and doing the same thing. And I do think that, you know, we probably did him a disservice by saying that his reads were super good last season, because then he went in thinking that his reads were good. And I feel like that was the same thing with a lot of people like Kevin and Davon. They were like, and Nicole were like, oh, or Nicole A were like, yeah, my reads, everyone knows me for my reads. And then they'd be so set on trusting their gut that they wouldn't just like open up their eyes and look around them and see that they were totally off base. So yeah, I mean, with David, yeah, it's a 2 for me as well, unfortunately.
All right. Now, we did the same thing last season. We gave the players overall ratings. Last season, Brent and myself gave David 3s. This season, we dropped him down to a 2. We were pretty close on where he should have stood, I guess. And now we're correcting one down to a 2. Melissa gave David a 7 overall. She has dropped him down 5 points, down to a 2.
Yep.
The audience gave David a 5 last season. This season, the audience has dropped him down to a 3.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
As well they should.
There it is. There it is.
It's too bad. It's too bad. And this is why I think that, you know, he's got that legacy watch position.
So I will tell you, small spoilers for the audience rating. This is the lowest rating by just a hair of the entire cast this season from the audience. All right. So then above David on the legacy watch in the low tier, we had Nicole Anthony. Let's talk about Nicole Anthony as a player. How do we rate her as a player? I will say last season, at the end of last season, I gave Nicole Anthony a 6 out of 10. I thought that she had potential, that she was capable of working on the outside of a group. If she had been included in the group, she would have been in a much better position, might have been able to do some better work. She showed some amount of good instincts, but I was not super high on her. I gave her a 6. This season, I have dropped her down to a 4. I feel like the things she did in Big Brother 21 definitely still exist. But kind of what I saw from here is that a lot of what she was doing, I do think, was helped along by Cliff. I think that Cliff was really the driver, the person who was able to point them in the right direction and get her going in the right direction. I think that the thing that I appreciated about her in Big Brother 21 is that she had a lot of relationships with the people in power, and that she was able to like work her way around them. She tried to strike at them, but then she kind of got a little gun shy, and then she was just trying to survive for a while, and she was good at damage control and she was good at like surviving, but watching her this season, I'm convinced that she's just never going to be included in one of the big groups. It's just not in the cards for her. She doesn't do the work to be included, and that's something that we weren't able to see in Big Brother 21 because the feeds aren't on for the first week. So you just kind of like, well, you know, maybe she just got unlucky. No, she actively didn't do the work to be included in these big groups this season. All the way back to the pre-gaming into the week itself, she was not doing that work. And then without somebody like Cliff to kind of keep her level, we saw that, you know, having Kevin there as her confidant was not great. So it's a 4 for me. Melissa, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's a 3 for me. I think that if we're looking at like, you know, like you said, if we put this player into like 100 games or whatever, how many times are they going to win? Like what's their win equity? And I just think that she's always going to have that problem of joining the big group. If Big Brother continues to cast the way they cast, I think that that's somewhere she struggles. And if you're not included in the big group or you don't have connections with people in the big group, then, you know, it's going to be a problem for you. So, I do see that being a problem. And also I do see her being influenced by people. And so like, if you happen to put her in with someone who's not influencing her in the correct way, like for example, Kevin this season, you know, then she's going to just follow what that person says and kind of believe it, and take that, even though what she's seeing with her own eyes is something different. So I do think that, she was lucky, like you said, that she was paired with Cliff, who had the good reads in the first season that she played in. But unfortunately, this season she didn't have that. And so it definitely does, lower my confidence in her playing in the future.
I also want to say very quickly, I think that she became a worse player after her experience in Big Brother 21, which comes into my rating a little bit, that as a first-time player, I actually think she's a better player than as a second-time player. I think if I was rating her strictly on this game or what she might do moving forward, it would probably be lower than a 4. But when I'm looking at her overall, stature as a player and as a first-time player, I'm adjusting to a 4. So that's why it's the 4 for me. Brent, how do you feel?
No, I feel similarly. Like I feel like the outside of the big alliance is where she almost feels comfortable. Like she's going to protest and say, like, "Oh no, that's not what I want. Like that's not where I want to be." But I do feel like there's a part of her that sort of feels comfortable in that aspect of the game, and like she just maybe I feel like sometimes she beats herself up and is like, well, I don't deserve that. I feel like there's a part of her that just is that way. I think somebody in the chat, I think it was Faith, asked, like, can you actively do something passively? And I feel like that's what she's doing. She's actively sort of not being part of the big alliance. Like, I think I think she's good with that. And it's easier for her to work on the outside. She's used to being an outsider and work from there. Like,
it's part of her identity.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd agree with the 4. And I saw people in the chat were like, Taran, you haven't explained the 4 very well. I'm like, I feel like you did. Like, she's never going to be a part of the big alliance. So that automatically, like, we have more information than we had after her initial season, having seen her twice now. And we got to this season was even more important because we got to see the first week, which we didn't even get to see that on her original season. So I understand where the 4 is coming from. I agree with it.
Yes. And I will say again, last season, I gave her a 6. Brent gave her a 6. Melissa and the audience gave Nicole 7s. So this season, the audience moved down to a 3. 3 from the audience. Big drop from the audience on Nicole Anthony. She was the second lowest rating score overall in the cast. So above Nicole on the Legacy Watch in the low tier is Christmas. We don't have ratings, postseason ratings for Christmas. We did not do this in Big Brother 19. But we can talk about Christmas as a player. We can start with you, Melissa.
I think that Christmas, she's a tough one just because, like, I see her getting far in the game probably every time she plays, just because, number one, she attaches herself to usually like a pretty strong alliance, and plays with that alliance the entire time. And so far, each time, she's ridden it to the end. However, like, I don't know if I see her, and I guess so. It's like she makes it down to the end. If she's playing 100 times, she's probably going to win some of those times. However, for the most part, I just feel like she's not always playing to win. She seems to be playing to get far, but then doesn't know how to like take it over the hump, because she's just one of a few in an alliance. So she's not like a number 1 or number 2 of anybody really, aside from Tyler, I guess, this round. But I do think that, she's a tough one to rate, and I don't know if I can. I kind of feel like I have to just give her like a middling score, just because I do think she's a strong player. However, I don't know if she wins. And I feel like she doesn't necessarily do the work that it takes to win a jury vote. I guess I'd probably give her, I'm trying to remember what I gave her in your survey, because I filled that out so that I remember this, and then I didn't write it down and submitted my results. Yeah, I didn't write it down. I submitted my results. I was like, all right, I'm good. And then I was like, oh wait, I don't have any of those.
If you really want to look, I think if you click on the survey, it's editable. So you probably can click on it and see all of your choices if you're interested.
Ooh. All right, you know what? I'm gonna give her a 5, but I'm gonna also check my survey to see if I did that the same. So I'm giving her a 5.
Brent, how do you feel about Christmas?
I feel a little bit better. I'm going to give her a 6. I feel like most of the time we've seen her on 2 seasons now, and both times she's been able to get into the majority alliance. People seem to enjoy her. Like behind her back, they're a little bit snappy at her. Like they're like, oh, she's a little crazy, you know, like, but she's also somebody that like they sense loyalty from. Like I never felt like anybody in the majority alliance felt like Christmas was specifically coming for them until much later in the game when like basically she had to show her cards. You know, she's fun TV too. Like I know that she's a bit messy, and I know she's can be a horrible person at times. Like I get all that. Believe me, I don't disagree with you guys on that. But she's not boring, and that alone like gets like a half point with me. So it's a 6.
Okay, this is gonna be.
I gave her a 6.
Ooh. Well, which one are you going with?
I guess I'll go with my original because I had thought that one through. So I guess I'll give her a 6.
All right, there you go.
I don't know. She's teetering between a 5 and a 6.
Here, let me give you.
I would have given her a 7, except for the fact Miss Melissa brought up the fact that can she win a jury vote? And
yes.
I'm like,
And that's the thing for me, because here's how I feel about Christmas. Genuinely, I think she's one of the best players on the cast in terms of like in the game. She's actively working in to make it further in the game. She's capable of winning competitions. She's able to get in with people. She's very rarely like an active target of people. But I think part of why she's so quote unquote good in the game is because everyone knows she can't win a jury vote. She's not respected in the house, and that gives her more wiggle room to kind of play that game, which I do think she's pretty decent at. But I really do feel like she's always going to have trouble winning a jury. I really do. Like there's no chance she's going to win this game. No chance. Nobody was going to vote for her in the end. And now I think it's very easy. You could easily say this is unfair for me to say this and to give her the rating I'm going to give her, because she probably could have won Big Brother 19, and that's 1 and 2. That's 50% chance she was going to win the game. But I also think Big Brother 19 was like historically bad jury management from all of the final 3. I don't know if she's ever going to find a more perfect place to win the game, and she still managed to lose. And it was her fault to a degree. And so that's one big negative for her game. The second big negative is that she is too easily manipulated and used by other people. I think especially if you look at her end game, you see that she was a little bit self-interested. She was willing to cut Cody. She was willing to do some things that a lot of other people weren't. But what you might forget is that she was doing all of that for Memphis, and that she was going to take Memphis to the end over Nicole, over anyone, and she would have lost to Memphis. And prior to that, she was used by Nicole, and prior to that, she was being used by Tyler. And that's just kind of the game that she plays, even the second time around. And so for me, it's a tricky one, because like I said, I think she's one of the better in-game players, but I think win equity wise, it's a 4 from me.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll go with the 5 and make it even. Go right in the middle.
All right. The audience agrees with me on this one. Actually, the audience gave her a 4. In the preseason, they gave her a... Where'd it go? Christmas, a 3. They moved up. They went from a 3 to a 4.
All right, well, that's good.
Taran, the one thing you said was she's too easily manipulated by people. I feel like you need to say she's too easily manipulated by men.
Well, like, Nicole was one of the people that manipulated her
you
this
think
season.
so? I don't feel like.
I felt like it was Nicole versus Tyler. Who can get Christmas to target their target? Christmas wanted to target the Deni side of things. Nicole swayed her to target Bailey, and Tyler and Enzo were unable to convince her otherwise.
Maybe.
I mean, I feel you.
Yes,
but all right. So let's move back over to the Legacy Watch. So that's going to be a 5 overall for Christmas. Let's move back over to the Legacy Watch and look at the next person in line here, and that is going to be Kevin Campbell, who is going to drop all the way up here. He is in 6th place overall in the upper tier. Dropping all the way down to 4th to last, just above Christmas in the low tier. This might be the furthest anyone has fallen in the Legacy Watch this season. Quite a ways to go here for Kevin Campbell. This hurts, Brent. I know you were a fan of Kevin as well.
I was I don't know what to make. I mean, listening to Kevin in his Instagram and some of his interviews after the season, like it does seem like he had a somewhat of an understanding of where he was going wrong in the season and some of the mistakes. Like, and he owns his shit too. That's the other thing I appreciate. Like, Kevin is aware. Like, I played terribly, here, there, everywhere. Like he understands it. But on the other hand, like, just because you understand it doesn't mean I'm going to give you a pass for it. So like, I understand where the audience is coming from, and insofar as like putting him in the lower tier. Do I agree that he belongs in the low tier? I think so, because he didn't really give me anything this season. He didn't give me no fights. He didn't give me no drama. He didn't give me no strategy, no good gameplay.
Yeah.
No sneaky moves, no nothing.
Character-wise, he fell flat, and he was somebody that a lot of people remembered from 11, but only like the hardcore fans. Like, he wasn't like a memorable character from 11 either. So character-wise, it's just not there. Give
me Frankie Grande over Kevin Campbell.
Oh, boy.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe, did I say that? Oh my God, I can't believe I said that.
Oh man. Well, I can't disagree too much. I like Kevin as a player. I'm probably going to be a lot higher on him as a player than than in terms of his legacy. I do think he did a lot of damage to his legacy. Okay, Moses in the chat. He said he said that the world doesn't revolve around you, Cody, and then he immediately took it back and apologized. Girl, bye. That doesn't even count. All right. Let's talk about him as a player then, moving back over to the ratings. Brent, how do you feel about Kevin as a player? Let's exclude the legacy. Just as a player, how does he fare?
Okay. As a player, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of shitty as a player. And I'm trying to remember his original season. Like, the game was also a little different back then too, and the juries were different back then too. I'm like, how low should I go on Kevin, you guys? That's the question, because I'm not feeling Kevin's game. I'm really not. He didn't give me anything. So strategy alone, strategy. Did he have a basic understanding of what was happening in the house? No. At least he understood that it was good for him, that if the people on the outside, like Janelle and Case, won HOH, that would have been probably good for him. But he wasn't, even then he was actively trying to subvert them and target them when he needed them in the game. That really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, how can you not see that you are in trouble here? It's almost like Kevin was on the block, and he was on the block, and he was on the block, and he was on the block. And finally, on the week that he's on the block and he's going to go home, he realized, oh shit, I'm in trouble, girl. But what about 5 weeks ago?
I mean, he knew he was in trouble.
Yeah, I know. It's he never did anything to but it's what could he have done? I'm trying to think of the week he could have done anything. He tried to save Ian. So I don't know. I don't even know what score to give him here.
All right. Well, maybe I can go. Melissa can go, and you can think about it. For me, a big part of this comes from his Big Brother 11 game, but you can see seeds of it in Big Brother 22 as well. I think he's really good at staying alive in the game. I mean, this is he is what Nicole Anthony was in Big Brother 21, but more successful at it in Big Brother 22. He knows who to suck up to in power. He makes them feel good about him. He was essentially saved for last in terms of the other people. He gives himself more outs to win competitions and potentially turn the game around if he's able to win. However, I think what this season showed me is that he's just really bad at reading people and house dynamics. In his original season, things were laid out in front of him. There were two sides, and he knew exactly what he needed to do to ride the middle and play the game, and he almost won, and it was great. This season, he couldn't see the sides, and he had no idea where to go, and he was just firing blindly, and he couldn't operate when things weren't laid out in front of him. I think in a different structured house, we'd see the better version of Kevin, the Kevin that can actually play the game pretty well. In this version, he's just not good enough. But I don't think we see this version of it frequently enough, at least yet to say that I think he's a bad player overall, because I think if you stick him in 1,000 random seasons, then at least half of them are going to be the seasons he's good at, where there are more clearly drawn lines. And I think that's where Kevin can excel. And so for me, I gave Kevin a 6 overall. I feel like I'd still be willing to take him in a season, in a random season, over a lot of other people. So that's where I stand here on Kevin. Melissa, how do you feel?
I agree with your sentiment, but at the same time, I don't really have the faith that if you put him in a bunch of random seasons that he would do well in like half of them. I just don't see that happening. I think that there is a very specific situation where he does well, and that's in a situation where the house is divided and he could ride the middle. But I think that in terms of like, if you put him in a house, I don't really see him, making those connections with the people that I honestly, I thought he would have a very easy time making connections with people when he comes into the house. And it really seemed like it was difficult for him. At least if you can't make connections with people, you could, at least sit on the outside and kind of have a read of the house and kind of get the big picture that you are like definitely not part of it. And I feel like it took him too long to realize his position in the house. And that concerns me a lot. I think that the fact that, not only was he unable to view it, like you said, he actively was like working against the people that were also on the outside, and instead of trying to point that inward, and I felt like it was just totally off base. He steered Nicole A in such a wrong direction. I just feel like it made me lose a lot of faith in him as a player, and as just like his ability to read the situation and also socialize with people. So I gave him a 3.
Okay, Brent, where do you stand?
Yeah, I'm probably with you guys. I mean, with Melissa, I should say.
I was gonna say, like,
you guys kind of disagree. No, but I'm with Melissa. Like, I remember how frustrated I was with him and Nicole. And like, even when like he had opportunities to use his like reading ability, the vaunted reading ability. And I don't know how many people going into this season we heard about their reading ability, and none of them were worth shit. Kevin screwed up, and I agree with Melissa as well. Like, I think most of the time, like, he's going to end up in this situation. Like, it's going to be frustrating, and it's true that this sort of situation that he encountered is not going to be very likely. Maybe he'll be able to stay alive. So I want to give him credit for his cockroach abilities, but on the whole, like, I wasn't that impressed with this game. And also, like, even if he had gotten to the end, I don't think the jury really even cared for him. So I'll be what? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, something that I think he understands and something that he articulated is that, being that player, the one that is able to scrape by long enough, if you're able to get just long enough, then you do have a path to win. And that's the Ian path, the Nicole Anthony path that she attempted to make, which is you just need to win a couple of competitions. You get that underdog status, you get some, momentum rolling. And I do feel like even this season, had he just been able to win a couple of competitions, which I don't think he's incapable of doing, then he would have had a small shot to win this one.
Yeah. But I still, I listen to both of you and I find myself agreeing with Melissa more. So I'm going to give him a 4.
Yes. I will say also that, just to warn you guys maybe a little bit, I think Kevin and Bailey are probably the 2 best players of the people who were not in power this season. And I have, these are going to be my highest ratings of those people. So, because I think all of them made at least equivalent and usually worse mistakes than Kevin and Bailey did in this whole situation. So the audience in the preseason gave Kevin a 7 out of 10. And then we move to the postseason, and they agreed with Melissa. They gave him a 3. It was close to a 4, but it was not quite a 4. It was a 3.
Yeesh.
So there it is for Kevin. I think that's overall going to land him at a 4. All right, let's head back to the Legacy Watch, where we are going to talk about the person I just mentioned, Bailey, who is at the top of the low tier here. She started the season in the low tier. In fact, she was at the top of the low tier at the start of the season. Now,
what?
She is in the same spot at the top of the low
That's
tier.
wrong. I think
Popularity-wise,
that's totally
she
wrong.
spiked, but legacy-wise, she seemed to have
But
stayed
I
the
think
same.
in terms of that's wrong. I think in terms of her legacy, like I think she absolutely came in and showed that she could play a good strategic game. She could like not get into a blow up argument like people thought that she would. Like I feel like she came in, and I do think she leaves the season with a much better with people thinking way more highly of her now than they did when she first started. I mean, I could see a situation where she's low tier before, but now after this season, that's wrong. That's just wrong. She should at least be, I mean, she should be middle tier. I think she should be middle tier. I think because, you know, I think that strategically she is smart, and I think that she, you know, she plays well. I think the problem is that she ends up in situations like she starts off strong, and I feel like her game always seems to peter out a little bit near the end, and I think that that's where she like kind of loses steam, loses connections with people, kind of like takes a back seat maybe, or something happens, and you know she kind of loses it. But I don't think she's a low tier player at all. I think she's a middle tier player for sure, especially after this season. I feel like she came in, she like people like her more, people respect her game more, people like, I just feel like she came in and made a better reputation for herself than she had coming in, and that should amount to something in the legacy watch.
It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, it should amount to something. I also personally loved Bailey on this season. She was a lot of fun, and I do wonder how the season would look. You know, CBS recently said that they're going to have a goal of having 50% BIPOC for their shows moving forward, including Survivor and Big Brother. And obviously this season didn't have that. And, you know, go back to how Bailey was eliminated on this season. It was by Christmas, who decided she was going to target Bailey and she was going to put up Davon with her. And she feared for her life when she decided to put them up on the block, fearing for like, I might get cut, I might get stabbed in the middle of the night if I do this. Like, we were like, do we not remember that? So like, you tell me why she put them up together. So yeah, I don't know that we can I don't know that that the games that we've seen, even though we've seen two of them and she's ended up in about the same spot, is a fair representation of Bailey's game. I guess it's a fair representation of Bailey's game from the Big Brother that we've known, but I look forward to the Big Brother that we haven't known, where people like Bailey and Davon don't have to play with, 13 other white people. Like, they might have a shot with, more people of color in the house.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that is something that was going to save to the end, but it's not relevant, but when it was placed. But there were two announcements actually, or not announcements. One announcement, one rumor that we will, I'm sure, talk more in depth about. But one is that CBS did announce that their casting will essentially match what Arissa from Big Brother Canada said that she was going to make sure happened in Big Brother Canada, which is that, as Brent said, 50% of the cast will be BIPOC, people of color, non-bland white people. Right? And this is very interesting. This is very interesting because I do think it will change the dynamics of how this will play out for a lot of people who come into the house as a minority. But speaking about Bailey, what I think is interesting here about Bailey is that, again, in the Legacy Watch, she basically stayed the same, top of the low tier. In the ratings, in the preseason, the audience gave her a 4. In the postseason, the audience gave her a 4. Mm-hmm. No movement as a player for Bailey. And yet, as I mentioned, in the favorite player list, she was 15th place and moved up to 8th place.
That makes me think it's just because people hate other people. Like it's like it has nothing to do with Bailey then, which is like sad, I think that these ratings are wrong. I think that that's not right at all. I think she played much better this season than she did last season. And I think that, yes, it kind of fell off near the end, but it didn't take a nosedive like it did that first season. I just feel like I disagree. I think that while I don't think that she's like star top tier player, I think, you know, I mean, if we're just going to do ratings, like, I mean, not that I'm that much, you know, higher than everyone else, but I think I gave her a 5 in my ratings. I have to go back and check, but I think I gave her a 5.
Well, I gave her a 6, similar to Kevin. As I said, I think Kevin and Bailey were probably the two best players from the people outside of the power structure. I think she came back and did prove that she's a very capable social player. I think strategically she is fine. I think she makes some missteps strategically that mostly involve, like she plays, I think, too much into personal relationships and not enough into strategy. And that is one of the faults of her game. But I think the biggest fault of her game is that she is, when we talk about Cody and how we haven't really seen him have to climb out of a tough spot, we have seen Bailey try to climb out of a tough spot, and she is not very good at it.
That is true.
So that is definitely her biggest fault. I am, however, confident more than ever that if you stick her in a random season, I do think she'll do pretty well. Regardless of the, you know, percentage of the cast that's whatever, I think that she is a very capable player. She has trouble with adversity, but you don't always face adversity. And I think outside of the adversity that she sometimes faces, she does pretty well. I mean, again, imagine a world where Memphis is able to include Bailey in the committee. He doesn't get vetoed by Deni, and because let's be real, the reason Deni vetoed Bailey was because she knew Bailey had a deal with Janelle. She told Nicole about it on night 1. She wasn't comfortable telling Memphis about it, but she used some excuse about, oh, she's tight with Devon. But that's why she didn't want Bailey in the committee, I would imagine, because she knew she was too tight with Janelle. But let's say she didn't. Let's say, you know, Deni hasn't snaked Janelle and she doesn't know that, and so Deni is not able to veto Bailey from the committee. She doesn't have reason to. Bailey is involved in the committee. She's tight with Memphis because they had a good relationship at that point, and they're both tight with Janelle. Bailey is now the only person in the committee that's with Memphis week 2 who's like, yes, I'm with you. Let's not nominate Janelle. They probably get in tight. They probably have a power structure involving Janelle and Kaser and Devon and some of those people. And I think she has some agency in the game. I do think, and we talked about this, that for as much as we may love Devon, there were many times in the game where Devon you know, was not making the best decisions, and it definitely did not help Bailey's game that she was so attached to Devon. And this is again where I feel like Bailey sometimes, you know, takes the sort of like personal relationships over the strategic decisions, and she was sort of allowed herself to be dragged down by some of those decisions. But overall, I do think she's a very capable player. I don't think we've been able to fully see it yet, but I think it's there.
Yeah, I agree with your 6. I think she's a really fantastic player. I love her. Her social game in the house is pretty spot on, and in a house where she actually has a chance, I think that she goes far. Like nobody's ever going to come for her early. It seems like most people want to include her in the power structure overall, and like she's never boring. And you know, I like it that she leads with her heart. I like players like that.
All right. Well, it's going to be a 5 overall there for Bailey. Let's head back to the Legacy Watch. And in the Legacy Watch, above Bailey, in the middle tier, is Keisha, who has dropped from the top of the upper tier down to the bottom of the middle tier. A big hit for Keisha this season. I'm going to disagree with this hit personally in the Legacy Watch, and I'll probably also disagree with wherever it goes in the game rating as well, because my personal opinion is that this season, what did it do to Keisha, really? I mean, really? I get it that people were upset that she didn't really do much in week 1, but for me, it's just like, she never really had much of a chance to get off her, you know, feet. I don't know what the saying is, but like, you know, usually week 1 is like 2 weeks long. This time it was 1 week. She got there. She was a last minute replacement person who didn't get to pregame with anyone. She gets there. She's looking around. She loses the first H2H. She's targeted immediately. She wouldn't have even been the person that went home week 1 if not for the safety suite, which doubly went bad for her. And then Just like that, she goes out because she doesn't really know where to turn and who to go to get the right votes. And let's face it, even if she does campaign, there's nothing she could have done. She wouldn't have gotten anywhere. I know what people wanted from her in the Legacy Watch is that she would have fought and yelled and screamed and gone all coven, but it just wasn't in the cards here. And I personally don't think that tarnishes her legacy, but I understand why some people do.
I feel like one thing can be said about her in that she didn't play the safety suite. She knew she was in trouble. She knew that her name was on Cody's lips in the first week. She also knew that Janelle and Kaser's name was that their names were also on Cody's lips. I feel like playing the safety suite when and you don't know what you could win HOH week 2. One of your allies could win HOH week 2. You know that your enemy is in power, and you have an opportunity to play the safety suite just to get yourself safe, to get your feet wet in the game. You haven't been able to pregame with anybody. It's a good, it's normally not there, and Big Brother's giving you a chance to reach out and grab a life raft, and your bitch ass doesn't take it. Are you kidding me? Like that I was aghast when that happened. So I understand where the audience is coming from and being frustrated with Keisha. How could you not play that? Like when you had the chance, like just swipe your card, man. Like that's all you needed to do. Like, and I know that in the end, Janelle and Kaser, maybe Kaser wins that and saves Janelle. Maybe it works out the same, but at least she doesn't leave something on the table. Like she left Big Brother having not played in the one competition that could have saved her.
I get that, but at the same time, for me, it's like that's one decision. And it also was a decision that, like, if we remember the details, like nobody was swiping their card until the very last second.
I feel like that's even worse though.
Is she gonna be like the one person to swipe her card? And that's gonna
she hasn't been pre-gamed on the chopping block. Yeah.
But let's look. I don't think it's the worst. I think there are reasons for her to make that call. If nobody swipes their card, then that means it's Kaser and Janelle on the block, and one of them is going home. And now you still have the ability to swipe next week, and you didn't make a target of yourself in the first week.
She should have been up there next to that goddamn door.
She should have had her card with her.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like, I'm not going to tarnish her legacy by a full tier and a half or whatever because she didn't have her card with her upstairs in the thing, right? Like,
is that what it, like, is that the tea? Like, she didn't have her card?
That's what she said in the exit interviews.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that. Yeah. Like, that's terrible. Like, you have to at least, the only way you're going to go up is if Janelle and Kaser are safe. And the only way they're going to be safe is if one of them wins the safety suite and saves the other one. So your ass better be up there next to that door when there's 20, 30 seconds left. You better have your card with you and be standing right there guard. Like, I mean, seriously, that's what I would do.
I hear you.
Hanging around there. And if you see them coming up, you got to swipe it too. You have to do it. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'll stop ranting.
All right. Well, that's where Keisha stands in the Legacy Watch. But how about the ratings here? This is an interesting one. As I said, I mean, I basically just gave my speech about Legacy. The same thing basically stands for me, player wise. I feel like this does not take away the game she played in Big Brother 10. I think she's basically still that player. She was put in a spot where there's not a lot that she could have done. Yes, I fault her for not having her card there, not being more prepared, but it's a relatively minor mistake in terms of, like, she was put in such a no-win situation that she had to be perfect in winning the safety suite, whatever, in order to survive 1 week. And the fact that she was unable to get out of there, like, I don't think that most players get out of the position she was in there week 1, given what happened. I think that, any player lower than a 7 out of 10 is not making it out of that spot. And for me, her Big Brother 7 game or Big Brother 10 game was like a 7 or 8 out of 10. And so I'm going to go with a 7 here for Keisha. I really don't feel like this season did much to tell me any more about her game personally. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard one. I think I rated her lower when I did the survey, but I think after hearing you guys both talk about her, I think that, like, I do need to be do need to give a little more weight to Big Brother 10 and not just, like, focus on this season, especially because we don't really know that much about it. I kind of, like, when I was initially doing my rating, was thinking, like, well, she got out first, so that has to, show something to it. And it didn't seem like she really bonded with people, and it didn't seem like she was really trying. I mean, yes, it might have been trying in vain, but it did kind of seem like she kind of gave up. And even when she was campaigning, it didn't seem like she was saying the right things. So it's kind of like, I don't know. However, I do feel like I need to give more weight to Big Brother 10. So I'm just going to give her a 5 just because I do feel like I don't really know moving forward. I don't know if this season gave me that much information about her. However, I do think that she didn't really play this season all that well. So I do feel like that affects the rating.
Brent.
Yeah, I agree with you, Taran. I think that overall, I'm not gonna hold her. I'm not gonna dog her too bad. I'm gonna give her a 6.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the audience gave her a 6 in the preseason. In the postseason, they gave her a 3.
Yeah, see, the audience is like, what have you done for me lately?
And
Yeah.
also, and I think this was part of the legacy watch as well. I think Big Brother 10 was now over 10 years ago. And the people in the preseason, the only people that rated Keisha in the preseason were people who knew about Keisha. And many of the people that don't know about Keisha from Big Brother 10 only know her from this season. They're the ones that are going to be, you know, that's additional votes that only know her from this season and would understandably be very low on her based on what they saw this season. So that's it there from the audience. Melissa, you gave her a 5, I believe, which is going to keep her at a 5 overall. Let's go back to the Legacy Watch. Above Keisha on the Legacy Watch, we have Deni falling all the way from 3rd place in the top tier
Yikes.
down to 2nd to last in the middle tier. Rough stuff for Deni. It's understandable. Now, I still think that Deni is going to be somebody that you think about when you think about Big Brother. I mean, she's played 3 times. She basically grew up on the show. She's a big part of its history. I think middle tier is like rough punishment for how disappointing she was. But personally, I would be more punishing on her gameplay than her overall legacy, because she still was a huge character on this season. She still made a huge impact. So I can understand where this comes from. I'm not sure I fully agree with it though, Brent.
Yeah, I'd put her in the upper tier actually, because Deni is never boring. Like, and it's impossible for Deni not to be a little bit messy. There were like so many of the weeks in Big Brother 22 were filled up with, you know, yeah, this person's going home, but dude, Deni, she's on thin ice because so many, like, her name's on so many people's lips. She's so messy, and like people, like, they don't trust her, and she's also really intense. Like, she comes up to people and she asks them stuff, and the way she comes at them is just really like, wow, you know, like, so I mean, she's not boring, so I don't know why people are upset with her. I mean, yeah, she was part of the Majority Alliance, but she knew she was part of the Majority Alliance, and like, she was determined, you know, look, she made a conscious decision coming into this season. I'm gonna play a different type of game. I played the fan service game last time. Yes, that got me all the Yas queens in the world, but I want the money. And I understand. I understood where she's coming from. So the fact that she's already giving me the Yas queens, like, I was more forgiving of the fact that she was like, I want to be a little boring this time and win the money. So I'm okay with that. So I wouldn't drop her down this far. I'd have her like in the bottom part of the upper tier.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of agree with the middle tier, but I could see upper tier as well. I'm kind of like teetering between the two, just because I do think that her legacy is, I don't want to say like tarnished, because that sounds so like harsh, but I do feel like it kind of is, in that like even when you look at like the favorite players and the people we were excited about coming in, everyone was excited about Deni. Deni was number 1. People were thrilled. And I do feel like now when you look back at Deni, you're not going to necessarily, like, this is the one that's burned into everyone's minds. And so I do feel like you're going to say, well, you know, she was really fun in her first 2 seasons, but this season was just not good for Deni. Like, she really lost a lot of fans there. And I think that's a huge part to me of the legacy watch, is like, what are people going to think about Deni? And I think people think less of her this time around. So I could see her being in middle tier. I mean, I think that I think I would have had her from top tier. If I was doing the legacy rankings in the beginning, I probably would have her in the top tier. And I probably now, I mean, yeah, it'd either be like lower part of the upper tier or middle tier. So I think that it's kind of right in terms of what the audience gave her here. It's unfortunate, but, you know, you kind of see like kind of a fall from grace, if you will, just because people loved her, and now I don't see that as much.
Well, let's talk about her rating then as a player. I will say I was never overly impressed with Deni as a player overall. I think that her Big Brother 8 game was not great. It was definitely helped a lot by, we talk about Evil Dick winning because of America's player, but, Deni getting as far as she did was also certainly down to some degree to America's player. And she was helped and hurt by her dad being there for sure. She has a reputation as a comp beast because of Big Brother 8 and the amount of competitions she won that season. But when you look at the competition that she had that season, she was like competing against her dad and some other people. Eric was throwing every single competition every time. Like there wasn't like a ton of competition that season for her. She certainly won a couple of things there in Big Brother 13, but nothing like super comp beastie. And so then you see this season, she was not really able to win many competitions at all. I think her reputation as a comp beast probably a bit overblown. As a player in 13, she also made some big blunders, and that cost her her position in the game. Now, I don't think she was terrible in 13. I think that she was in a pretty decent position, but she was also a returning player in a new player cast, a mixed cast, which gave her an advantage to begin with. But either way, she was still doing decently, but then made some pretty critical errors. This season almost seemed to be her best game so far, her most advanced game, and yet it was still full of holes. It seemed she was way too obvious about her seeds that she planted. She gave far too much to Cody and trusted him way too much, and let's kind of let him run her game to a degree, and was just a massive house target for most of the game. I mean, she tries, she plays hard, she has a head for the game, and she's competent at competitions at the very least. So I give her some credit. So for me, it kind of balances out to a 5.
That's exactly the same for me. I enjoyed watching Deni. I don't want to sit there and say that I necessarily am agreeing that her legacy is bad now. I think that fans are not thrilled with her now, but I honestly, I loved the way that she was in the DR, talking about how she was a puppet master. And I love that she was owning her game and that she was laughing at the fact that America probably hates their side and their alliance. And I thought that, she was entertaining to watch. She brought some interesting gameplay, and it wasn't just a simple okay, we're in a big alliance and we're just going to stay together to the end. So I honestly enjoyed watching her. I was happy to see her back. I was disappointed that she kind of just in the second half of the game kind of did whatever Cody wanted her to do and kind of just trusted him too much, because I feel like that's where she really fell off. But overall, I think if you put her in a different house, she might play a better game, but she might also play a worse game. And that's why it kind of evens out to a 5 for me.
Brent.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Immensely, I had already awarded my score because I was listening to the two of you and I'm like, oh, I know what score I'm giving her. I'm going to give Deni a 6. Deni, it has competent gameplay. She understands her position in the game. She did make a mistake this season in terms of she was a little bit the lamb that got led to the slaughter, as in I always look at it early Survivor, when people didn't know that the bottom people needed to rise up and go against the power structure. She thought she was in the power structure and she got led to the slaughter by Cody and his allies. So there's that. But I don't hold it against her because she was like I said earlier, she was trying to play a different type of game. But as I said, throughout the season, I felt like she really overcorrected, because if she had had a little bit of the old Deni in her, she has the wherewithal to be able to do something and realize that, hey, I'm in trouble here. I need to change the course here. This is not a good path for me. People were talking about targeting Deni all the way back in week 3 or week 4. I don't even think she realized how lucky she was just to make the jury. Mm-hmm. So I think she has the skills. And so, and she's also really fun. And the fact that her confessionals gave me life, I'll give her a 6.
Well, in the preseason, the audience gave Deni an 8 out of 10 on gameplay. In the postseason, they agreed with Melissa and myself. They gave her a 5. So, bit of a drop there for Deni in gameplay as well. Let's move back to the Legacy Watch here in the middle tier above Deni, we have Memphis, who dropped from the upper tier to the middle tier. Now, not a huge drop for Memphis, but it was a drop, and this is actually a drop that has been relatively recent. As early as the previous Legacy Watch we did, he was still in the upper tier, so he has dropped down into the middle tier. I can kind of understand this. I think I would not agree gameplay wise. Entertainment wise, did he give us much this season? Did he give us much in his first season? I mean, still, I think the most memorable thing about Memphis is that he's not a womanizer. So I can see that being fair, legacy-wise.
I guess I see that. However, for me, I think he improved on his legacy for me because I was way more impressed with his gameplay this time around. And I always felt like last time it was like, okay, well, he's with Dan, so it's Dan doing everything. But I do feel like this season, he kind of just like took things into his own hands and was like, all right, yeah, we're going to make this alliance, and yeah, we're going to do this and that. And presumably, by all accounts, it shouldn't have worked, the committee and everything, but it did. And I think that, I like Memphis's style of gameplay as well, where it's like, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is what's going to happen. And, that's the game and that's what I'm doing. Whereas other people, they beat around the bush. They don't tell you what they're actually thinking. They, say, no one's telling me anything. I have no idea what's going on, even though they have exactly the knowledge of what's going on. So I just like that Memphis was up front with everything. And I did appreciate that style of gameplay. So to me, I do think I think he stays in the upper tier. I don't think he's top tier, but I do think that I respect his game more now. And I realize that he is a good player, much more than I did before. So I do disagree with this one.
Brent?
Oh, Memphis. I mean, I think that's probably right. Memphis, we loved Memphis because he was part of the Renegades and he gave us Dan elevated Memphis. Okay. But there was no Dan this time. It was all Memphis. And, I feel like this is about right. In fact, middle tier for Memphis being the boring old, grumpy guy, I feel like this is actually pretty fair for him as far as legacy goes.
Well, gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
Gameplay-wise, I was definitely very impressed with Memphis this season.
Me too.
I was very impressed with Memphis after Big Brother 10. In fact, I had Memphis listed in my best to never win list that we did around 4 years ago. We did a podcast, and I talked about Memphis as one of my best to never win. He came back, and in my view, he proved me right where Kevin proved me potentially wrong. And so I was very impressed with Memphis. A great run in Big Brother 10, followed by a great run in Big Brother 22. He's just a couple of endgame competitions away from being the Big Brother 22 winner. And here's the thing about Memphis. We talked about the committee and how dominant it was, and he created the committee, sure, but a lot of people are like, okay, but he didn't really do anything. They just won all the competitions. That's why he was safe, whatever. But the fact is, in my view, he forged together a group of people he had very little social connection to, pissed them off a week later by not doing their bidding and setting up his own version of what he wanted, and then they protected him for the rest of the game. Which is pretty good. And it was intentional that he did this. He intentionally set himself up in a position where he was being protected by those people. He was never a huge target by anyone in the game. And then he sets himself up in the end game with this Wise Guys plan, which I do think was a pretty good plan. The problem is that he just chose the wrong person, and he was just off by a little bit. He chose Enzo to be the linchpin of his plan. And if Enzo is just a little more self-interested, he probably doesn't rat it out to Cody. And if he doesn't rat it out to Cody, then Memphis has an even better chance in the end to win one or two of those competitions and take home the win. I really do feel like this was a very impressive game, one that will probably stay underrated in the history of how we talk about the season. But I was very, very impressed with Memphis this season. I think he has room to improve as a player, but I really do think that he's really good at what he does, and I gave him an 8.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I gave him a 7 just because I don't know how this would work in a random season. Maybe it was just that this season it miraculously worked. I mean, if you put him in a random house with a typical Big Brother cast, like, I don't know if him doing the like grumpy old Memphis routine, like, hey, I don't really talk to you guys, but we're going to do this alliance and we're going to do it kind of my way or the highway, would work with everyone. So I don't know about that, but I do think that like I was very impressed with his gameplay here. And so, yeah, got to give him a 7.
I give him a 7. I felt like I needed a little bit more from him as far as like panache, as far as the season goes. Maybe I was just spoiled by what he was like with Dan, but yeah, like, I mean, the fact that he filled in the blanks for me was the big kicker, meaning that I felt like I had an understanding of what Memphis was doing and where he was going in the Big Brother 22 game. And then when he kicks it up a notch, and with only 3 days to prepare.
That too. The fact that like he gets a call 3 days before sequester, comes into a game that is full of people who have connections, who have at least talked a little bit here, and manages to get in there and become basically the person with maybe the second best chance to win overall, maybe played the second best game overall. Like, it's very impressive.
Yeah, it really is. So I have to give him a really good score here. I'll give him a 7.
All right. Well, in the preseason, the audience gave Memphis a 6. In the postseason, the audience gave Memphis a 6.
Yeah,
no movement.
Really, I mean, they can appreciate Memphis, but I don't know that they're really impressed by him. He needs a little bit of a shine, you know.
Yeah.
Some amazing move. Like, he almost had it with like the wise guys thing. He was trying to be like, I felt like there was a little bit of Dan in him with naming them.
Oh
both,
yeah.
like,
I mean, imagine if that pays off.
I know, right? Yeah, like naming them both the wise guys.
Imagine Christmas cutting Cody at the Final Four going, Cody, I'm sorry, but it's been the wise guys all along. And Cody's like, are you serious?
Right? Yeah, that definitely had Dan implications there, because Dan would do something like that because he knew it would be fun for the audience and the gag worthiness of it all. So Memphis tried. It just didn't work, you know?
Yeah. All right. So that's a 7 overall for Memphis, the highest rating so far. But let's move on back over to the Legacy Watch. Above Memphis on the Legacy Watch, we have Devon in the upper tier. She has made it into the upper tier, moving up from the preseason. Devon moving from the middle tier to the upper tier. She's been on a bit of a roller coaster ride all season long, up and down, but she is ending on a high note, winning America's favorite player, and her legacy has improved.
Yeah, I think the America's favorite player definitely assists her in this. I think if you're just looking at gameplay, you might like not see why she would be an upper tier, but Legacy Watch to me takes into account like your impact on the season and your impact with the fans. And I think that winning America's favorite player is a big part of that. So yeah, I would agree with her move, I think.
I think I'd probably have her in the top tier. I think I'd probably have her in the bottom part of the top tier, because I just think Devon has become like synonymous with Big Brother. Like she is such a big so
presence.
Much of the water cooler talk about Big Brother is about like Devon Rogers, huh? What'd you say?
Presence. She has so much presence on the show.
Yeah,
like every season is about her. Even 17, she was there for 2 weeks. We talk about her on 17.
Yeah,
that's actually a good point. Yeah, she might actually be top tier.
Yeah, I think she really is. Like, I mean, like, is she top tier gameplay? Obviously not.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, even her speeches this season, I mean, also, like, every season that she does, she's always in the DR telling the story. I think also in terms of her performance in the jury house each time, like, I just feel like she does a really good job with that and kind of leads the narrative. And then she basically hosted the Roundtable. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I guess I would go with top tier. That makes sense to me now that you mention it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about her game then. Let's talk about her game. Brent, do you want to start off here?
Sure. Okay. Look, I don't think I want to give her that bad of a score. Like, I think she understands what to do. So I can't remember, like, if he's. I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't even know I can reveal that. Sorry. Oh, never mind. Devon got a little help from some reality veterans going into this season. I can't remember. I don't think it's been revealed, or maybe it hasn't. I don't like, that's the thing. I can't remember, so I can't reveal it to you guys. But I know that she tried. Like she tried. She went and got help. She tried to like put plug up the holes in her game, and in a different season with a different cast that's higher Black, Indigenous, people of color, maybe she's got a shot. But this season with this big Mayo alliance, as we were calling it, controlling the season, like they were just not going to let her. They were not going to let her win. Also, it should also be said that like Devon is so enigmatic, because for her to be able to use the veto in the face of everybody in the house basically telling her not to use the veto, like that, just like that's like what we love about Big Brother, and she did it. She never forgot the fans. I remember like the first week or two, the first night maybe, she was looking at the camera going like, guys, I know I'm trying to work this out with me and Dani, I think it was Dani, her and Janelle.
I wish she didn't though.
Right, I know. It's just, she's trying to make us happy. So I'll give her a 5. I feel like she has some tools, and she could win Big Brother if she got a couple breaks here and there. She just never got those breaks. God damn it, Devon, why didn't you win that HOH when you had
Brent,
the chance?
I wish I could agree with you. I feel like she did get breaks, and I feel like she actively sabotaged her own game every step of the way.
Okay.
She makes decisions like strategically. Like I think talking about the game, she probably knows exactly what to do, but when she's there, it seems like she always turns the wrong way.
Okay, let me ask this question. So the week that Ian went home, where she voted to evict Tyler, I feel like we're almost being mean to her because we're punishing her. She
did the. Brent, that week she thought that she was the one that convinced Dani to put Ian up, because she thought that Ian was in the core, and she thought that she had done a really good job, and she was going to vote Ian out until it became blatantly obvious with what was happening. And then even after that happened, she then believed Nicole that David was the one that flipped. Like I don't think that's the best example of that should have been a very straightforward vote. And it was not very straightforward in a lot of ways.
All right. Go ahead.
And I feel like she trusts people she shouldn't, and she doesn't trust people she should. And she fact checks, which makes people not trust her. I think her biggest strength is her likability. I do think she can win the game if she gets to the end. But she did win that veto. But apart from that, she's not been great in competitions. And strategically, I don't love it. And there are just too many things that drag her down in the game that she makes those decisions, and it really points her in the wrong direction. But I do think like strengths, she's likable, and she really bonds people to her. Like she really acquires allies very easily. She makes people want to work with her personality wise, but then she kind of pushes them away when she questions them, and she fact checks and she does other things. So for me, it's unfortunately it's a 3 for Devon. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go right in between you guys and give a 4, because I agree with what both you guys were saying.
There it is. All right. Well, the audience is with Brent. Actually, they gave her a 5.
Yeah,
they gave her a 5.
Yeah, we like Devon.
There you go. Like yeah. I don't like being the bad guy here. I don't.
You're being fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on back over to the Legacy Watch. We have above Devon in the upper tier, Enzo, who has jumped up from the middle tier. So both Enzo and Devon, a bit of a jump there from the middle tier up into the upper tier. I think this is mostly fair for Enzo. I think he deserves upper tier, especially after this season. I don't know if I would go all the way to top tier, especially considering the fact that he was not a people pleaser for the audience, or say an audience pleaser. He was a people pleaser in the house, but not an audience pleaser outside of the house.
Yes, agreed.
So I think upper tiers, legacy wise, I would say like gameplay, like I think he's up there. I think like throw him in the top tier in terms of the impact that he's had on the show, being a co-creator of the Brigade, which has been one of the major changes in the structure of how the game is played, and being somebody that it's made it to the final 3 and to the final 2, that is a big character every time he plays. I could easily see a case to be made that he should be top tier. At the same time, he's not the most entertaining player. The structure he created is not one that people enjoy, and this season he did not do the things that the audience wanted him to do, so I can see why he's here in the upper tier.
Yep, I totally agree.
Yep, and he's also really fun on TV. Like we love him. And
yeah, he is very fun.
Yeah, and he can be like he can drive you crazy at times, but it's impossible to be mad at him. You know what I mean? So
I don't know if it's impossible to be mad at him, considering how mad people were at him, including you.
Well, I mean, like people are frustrated with him, but I feel like then when he goes and like talks and like jokes around, you're not like, oh, I hate this guy, he's awful. You're like, oh, why'd you do that, Enzo? Like, you come on, Well,
now that he can talk to us, he can mirror us and make us feel like we like him again.
Well, it is true because I mean, when he talked to you for his interview, I loved when he was like, "Okay, what do you think? Like, what do you think about what I should have done or my moves or whatever? Like, you tell me."
You guys talk about this for a little.
I loved it.
First thing he said to me, "Oh, Taran, I know this guy," and I was like, "Oh, wow, he's working on me right away."
Yeah, see, I thought he did a good job because after the interview, I was like, man, he like cares about, what you guys think of him and what you think of his gameplay and everything. And that's important.
I also love the fact that Rob clocked that Enzo said, like, I'll never do a podcast, I'll never do one of those. And Enzo was like, did I say that? Like, he's like, okay, well, I'll do one with you guys. I'll sit down and talk, yeah, hopefully he does because we'd like to hear from Enzo.
All right. Well, how do we feel about Enzo's game? Brent, or no, I went with you last time. We can do me this time. Okay. What do I have to say about Enzo? I think Enzo's a great player. I do. I think prior to the season, I probably would have given him a 7-ish, and that I felt like people probably overrated him. And I was like, look, Enzo, he did all right. He's a good player. He was part of the structure that did very well. But he didn't really have much of a shot to win, and I think he sort of overestimates his own ability in the game. He comes back this time and kind of proves himself right to a degree. I think that he was able to replicate what he did the first time, and that is very impressive. He is, I think, one of the best social players, just in terms of the ability to mirror people, the ability to make people feel like he's on their side. It's an impressive ability that he has, and I hesitate to say one of the best social players because I think social ability is more than just that one aspect of things. One of the parts of social playing is jury management and convincing people to respect you, and he does not have that. But in terms of like social maneuvering, positioning, getting himself in a spot where nobody's coming for him, everybody feels like he's on their side. He is really, really good at that. He did it to amazing degree in Big Brother 12, and then again here in Big Brother 22, full of all-stars. I'm very impressed by his game. The biggest problem that he has is that he is somebody that plays a little scared. He has a little bit of lack of agency. He doesn't push things very hard. And I think he needs to play a little bit riskier if he wants to break out of the sort of mold that he has for himself. And then the second part is that he's not good enough at competitions. Just wins a couple of competitions, similar to Memphis, just a couple of competitions, and he could win this game. I think more than anyone else, he probably is capable of consistently finding a path to the end game with a chance to win, which is phenomenal. It's just that his chance to win is probably never going to be the highest chance in the end game. It's probably going to be the lowest chance every time he gets there, but he's going to get there pretty consistently. So very good overall. I'm going to move him up from where I had him before. I'm going to give him an 8 overall. Very impressed with Enzo. I do think he can win this game at some point, and I think consistently he will make it very far.
I concur with the 8. That's exactly the score I would have given him.
Yeah, I'm debating whether I want to give him a 7 or an 8, just because I do agree with you that number one, I think he plays a really great social game. And I think that you're right in that he probably will get to the end a lot of the times. I mean, he already has. However, I do think that his game kind of falls off in the second half. And I think that the second half is where you need to be winning competitions, making big moves, proving yourself, creating a good, bench for you on the jury. And I think that he kind of loses it there. I think the first half of the game is super strong for him. And I think if you put him in any house, it'll be super strong for him. However, I think that those other elements are important. I don't know. I just feel like I don't see him winning that much. Like, I feel like I see him playing well and I see him getting far, but I don't feel like even if you put him in a random number of seasons, I don't really see him winning. And that's why I'm a little bit between the two. And the reason why I'm sitting here like waffling is because I'm thinking about who would be higher than him. And I'm thinking like, what do I want to potentially give Cody? Do I like want to give him a 9 or do I want to give Cody an 8 and give Enzo a 7? I don't know. Can you give the audience score?
Yes. So the audience in the preseason gave Enzo a 6. In the postseason, they gave Enzo a 6. Now these are very different scores. It was barely a 6 in the preseason, and it was just short of a 7 in the postseason. So it was almost a full point forward, but not quite enough to get it all the way. I will say, I think Enzo can win a season like Big Brother 20. I think Enzo wins that. I think Enzo is a better version of a player like Casey, personally. Just he lacks the comp wins is the big problem. And that's where Casey has a leg up on him. But in terms of like active gameplay strategy, positioning himself to always be in that Casey position, I think Enzo is always going to be there to reap the rewards of a bitter jury, or just a jury that feels closer to him than the person he's sitting next to, even if he doesn't win those competitions.
All right, I guess I'll give him an 8.
There you go.
Well, I guess I'll do it. But just know, it could have been a 7.
Could have been a 7. You're on watch, Enzo.
Yeah, Enzo's on watch.
All right. Let's head back over to the Legacy Watch. And above Enzo, in the upper tier, we have... This is a close one. Let me just refresh the page here, just in case there's any updates. The survey is still live, guys. So if you still want to take it, you can go to my Twitter at Armstrong Taran, and take the survey if you are interested in contributing and giving your thoughts. So here it is. Nicole Franzel is going to land there above Enzo. So Enzo and then Nicole. Nicole, who was in the upper tier and is going to stay in the upper tier. No big movement here. In fact, this is almost exactly the same score she had prior to the season starting. No real movement. I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think this is punitive, and I think it's going to change.
Honestly, I'd probably put her in the top tier. I mean, she won and then got super close. I mean, she almost became our first 2-time winner, which I think is a big deal. I mean, obviously it's a big deal. So I don't know. I feel like I would probably put her in the top tier. I mean, she's been on 3 seasons now. That's a lot. And she's done well. And she did decently in her first time, but then did super well in her second and third time. So I'm kind of, I do think that she should probably be in the top tier by this point.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, I think, look, she's the person who's played the most amount of Big Brother of anybody. Mm-hmm. Anybody. And she has spent the most amount of time on our screens. And she is a winner who is one of the closest players to ever win twice. And like her or hate her, you have an opinion on Nicole Franzel. Like, she is there.
She's not boring.
And this season, I think her status has certainly elevated beyond where it was before in terms of her placement in the annals of Big Brother, legacy. So
yeah, I mean, I certainly respect her more this season than I did last season. I feel like Big Brother 18, I was like, it's a fluke. She shouldn't have won. Now I'm like, okay, she did it again. We all need to look at this a little differently. She's gotten to the final 3. She could have possibly won. Like, we don't know. And so, I think that's something it's significant.
Well, let's talk about her game then. Let's talk about where she stands in the game. And I knew you were thinking about that, Brent, because while I was saying it, I was remembering the time that you once said something else. And that's why that word came to mind, and I couldn't think of another one in the moment.
So
I don't even remember when that was.
It was years ago.
Audio people.
It was years ago.
Yeah, because the people in the audio, they're like, they don't know what we're laughing at. Like, so Taran, if you heard, like, when Taran said, the annals of Big Brother, he took a second to like make sure he was saying the right word, because when I said it like about 2 years ago, I said the annals of Big Brother, and I really thought I was right. Like, I really did. Like, I said it with such confidence, and like they were like, "What?" God. So then, like, and it hasn't come up since then. But I couldn't even remember that I was the one who said it. Like, when I typed, because I typed in the chat, I said, Taran was being careful not to say the anals of Big Brother.
And the second you started smiling and typing, I was like, he's about to type this in the chat. All right.
Oh God. Yes.
I feel great about Nicole's game this season. I think we did not rate games back in Big Brother 18, but I think somewhere along the way I gave her winning game an 8 or a 7, or I think it was an 8. I think her winning game. And that's basically where I stand on her as a player. I think that she is a very talented player. She is the most experienced player out there. And I think this season solidifies that the potential she always had, going all the way back to Big Brother 16. Like I said, she learns from Big Brother 16. She learned from that experience. She brought that knowledge to Big Brother 18. She did better. She brought that knowledge to this season, and in my opinion, she did even better. In the first half of the game, she was in the first month of the game, right? She was insulated. She was influential through. It was really the first half. It was until Ian left, at which point Cody outflanked her, and she was forced to adapt and survive under Cody's thumb. And she did. I mean, she then survived and got to a position where she came one question away, potentially 2 questions away, from being capable of winning for a second time. Now, the biggest flaw here, as I said, is her willingness to take people to the end that she can't potentially beat. But as I mentioned before, I do think that's something she could learn from. And if she did play again, even though she doesn't really want to, I don't think that would be a flaw that would still be there. And that's who she is as a player. And that's why I'm so high on her as a player. So yeah, I gave her an 8.
Yeah, like, come on, like, that if like 3-4 years from now, like in Big Brother 25, they decide to do a second chance a season, or like or heroes and villains or something, like 2 or 3 years from now, she's gonna have the itch to play. She is, like, she's gonna want to come back, she's gonna want to prove herself, and she's not gonna she doesn't want this to be the ending taste in her mouth. So I do feel like that there's a chance that she could come back. And you know what? I know you guys think like I've been, because every time I say something positive about Nicole or Christmas, the chat thinks I've been possessed or something. Like, I'm sorry. Like they were not boring this season. Nicole, like, I enjoyed Nicole more than I disliked her this season. She really, like, of the 3 seasons that I've watched Nicole on my television, this was the one that I enjoyed the most, because she was absolutely insufferable when it came to like being paranoid about where she was in the game, but it was fascinating to watch. And I do feel like there were times where she slowly inched over to owning her game. Like, it wasn't a lot, but it was a little bit. It was more than she had before. And the fact that she did it basically on her own, like, I know that somebody in the chat also said, oh, stop, Brent, after the first couple of weeks, like, she was basically just like under Cody's thumb. Well, I'm like, you know what? She like, what's the difference between her and Enzo? Like, they both picked the same horse to ride and rode it to the end. So like if that's the way she's going to play, then that's good for her. I do wish that she would have cut Cody there at the end, but that's probably a flaw in her game she needs to reevaluate and fix. Overall, I'll give her a 7. I was really impressed with her gameplay, and I think that you should be too.
Yeah, I would give her an 8 as well. I was absolutely impressed with her. I think people need to respect her game. I mean, look, even if it's not necessarily the kind of game you want to watch or anything like that, she's gotten to the end twice now. And I think that it's very impressive. You have to give her credit. And I don't think it's a situation where she's just being dragged along. I think she does her own work. And I think that she's very impressive. So, I got to give her credit, and I'm giving her an 8.
All right. Well, the audience gave her a 6 in the preseason and a 6 in the postseason. They did not move significantly on Nicole. She did go up a little bit within the 6, but not
did she ever get to a 7? Like, did they ever give her a 7?
Yeah. You can see
last
here.
Week.
The final week, they gave her a 7.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Not quite enough there. So let's head back over to the Legacy Watch. Above Nicole in the Legacy Watch, by a hair, Ian Terry, who fell down from the top tier into the upper tier, which I think is fair enough. I mean, he's still the guy that beat Dan Giesling. Mm-hmm. And you may disagree with the way it happened, but it still happened. I mean, it's still, that legacy wise, that's cemented forever, right? But I think probably what's happening here, for me, what I saw from Ian gameplay wise was not surprising, but I think for a lot of people, what they saw from Ian this season, they were kind of expecting more. And that disappointment has translated to his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that people, when you say oh, he beat Dan Giesling, well, what a star. I think that people are expecting that sort of gameplay. They're expecting, legendary gameplay. And I think that his reads during the season and the fact that he kind of tied himself to Nicole and didn't realize who was in power. And there was that one glimmering moment where it seemed like he really had everything figured out and he knew what he was going to do with it. But then the second there was some adversity, he just came crawling back. And it wasn't oh, okay, there's the adversity, and I need to crawl back, but I still am keeping my eye out because now I know the structure and now I know who I need to work with, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just trying to save my back right now. It didn't feel that way. It felt okay, well, I gave up. I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I'm just going to go back with the power. It was not great. I think that it could have taken another turn. And I do think that in terms of the legacy watch, I think his legacy could have been better had he, led a rebellion against them. And even if he would have gotten out right away, I think that at least his legacy would have stayed the same. Maybe the gameplay aspect of it would have dropped a little bit, but I think in terms of his legacy, that would have been something people would have wanted to see. Instead, it did seem oh, okay, it's Ian just following Nicole around. And even then when he starts to realize what's going on, it doesn't matter. He just wants to stay with her and stay with the group and thinks he's part of something. So it just wasn't great for Ian, I think, this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the audience being so down on Ian. I mean, he's still one of the bright parts of Big Brother history. He really is. The fact that he beat Dan, and that was an amazing season. That was such an amazing season, and he beat Dan. It wasn't he just beat Dan in a nothing season. That season was everything, and he still won it. And how he won it, they tried to get him out so many times, they couldn't get him out. And then the one time they could get him out, he had to make the play against Shane, Dan did, obviously. I understand where they're coming from with Ian, but I think I probably look more favorably. And also Ian, he took it on the chin. When he was eliminated, I know people were down on him because he was if I'm first in jury, I'm not going to talk to anybody afterwards. I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to stay there. But once he was actually evicted, he was good game, I understand why you guys did it. And in the fact that he was targeted by some secret alliance that he didn't know about made him feel better. That should elevate him in you guys' eyes, I feel like. So I don't understand being that down on Ian. I'd probably have him probably at the top of the upper tier. So I guess this isn't that far off, or maybe at the bottom of the top tier. Yeah. Somewhere in there.
I still think he's one of the faces that, casual Big Brother viewers would recognize and be like, oh, that's Ian.
Exactly.
All right. But what about his game? How do we feel about his game here?
I feel like he had a pretty good a grasp on what was happening, don't you? Like, I mean, like there were times. Well, okay.
No, that's the opposite of what I would say.
For a moment in time, I feel like he did, and then he lost the plot.
Somebody told him what was happening.
Yes, I know. I mean, well, it happens. But even then, like, he didn't go with that. Like, that frustrates me because I remember like listening to him and he was like, he had it all figured out. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Ian. Yeah, I know. Yeah. He got it by like, fruit of the poisonous tree, like, it's like, it would never be admitted as evidence like that you got it. But like, oh my God, like, we don't care. Who cares? And then he just like totally discarded it all. So I don't know how to feel about Ian right now.
I mean, I think he has a great head for the game. And I do think that counts for a lot. It's just that like, again, in the game, he's never able to apply that knowledge because I think his worst quality in the game is his inability to see things as they are. That was his biggest flaw in Big Brother 14, is that he was being led around on a leash by Dan. And he was blindfolded the whole time. And this time it felt very similar, only it was with Nicole, until he finally finds out his eyes are opened. The literally outside influence pulls down the blindfold and he sees what's happening. And I'm like, okay, now Ian finally has an awareness of the game, of like what's happening. Now he can apply his great mind for the game. Now we'll really see what he's made of. And he just completely fumbled it. And he did not know what to do with it. And he told it to the wrong people, and he immediately got outed and immediately had to beg for his life. And he was just put right back into the place that he was before. And it was like, oh, well, I guess that's not what he needs either. It's still more that he needs. And so it's tough. I think that like he is tenacious. He does have game knowledge somewhere in that brain. He is very likable, and he can be very good at competitions as long as they're the kind that are in his wheelhouse. And I think those are all positives for his game. And I think those are what elevates him to, for me, a 5. Because really that comp ability, like he was unevictable in Big Brother 14 for so long. And because he was so good at competitions, and he's so likable that he can get to the end. Now, granted, he was not likable in 14 by the cast. He was only liked by a couple of people in that cast, but he was liked this season, and I think that's important. So yeah, it's a 5. It's probably barely a 5. I think he did improve on his game this season, but I think it's a 5 on comp wins alone.
Yeah, it's a 5 for me as well. And that's taking into account his win before and his gameplay last time. I think this time it would have been even lower had he not won last time and had he not played before, which is unfortunate, but that's it just evens out that way.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'll give him a 5.
There it is. In the preseason, Ian got an 8 from the audience. In the postseason, they're with us, actually. They gave him a 5. So similar to Deni, who I believe had the same trajectory here, an 8 to a 5 from the audience. It was a close one, but it landed at a 5 here. So there it is, straight 5s. First one we all agree on, I think. There you go. Okay, let's move back over to the Legacy Watch. Above Ian. In the Legacy Watch, in the upper tier. No, sorry. This is not in the upper tier anymore. We are moving on. By the way, so this is the upper tier. It's Devon, Enzo, Nicole, and Ian. They are separated. So each tier consists of a range of 10 points. All 4 of Devon, Enzo, Nicole, and Ian are separated by about 1 point. They're all very closely grouped together at the bottom of the score range. Then we have a big jump into the upper tier, and the first person in the upper tier, at the bottom of the upper tier, is
Cody.
Tyler Crispin.
Oh, really?
Yes. So Tyler is going to be at the bottom of the upper tier. One of my biggest questions leading into the finale was, can Cody overtake Tyler. And as you see here, that has in fact happened. And as we will talk about Cody eventually, but there is Tyler, who in the preseason was in the top tier, but he was at the top of the top tier. And this time he is at the bottom of the top tier. He is only a couple of points away from dropping into the upper tier, but he has managed to hold on here.
Honestly, I might drop him to the upper tier just because I do.
With him.
I do feel like he played so well last time and was like, oh my God, amazing. Like we all were like, he's one of the best to ever win. He should have won, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then this season was just such a departure from that. And it showed that, like, we had always said, you know, well, he never really faced adversity in his season. And so, you know, we're interested to see what it's like when he faces adversity. And it did seem that the second he faced adversity here, he kind of crumbled. And to be fair, you know, his heart wasn't in it. And so maybe it would be a different thing if, like, he had played with his heart in it and wanted to be there and all that sort of stuff. Maybe it would be totally different. But I do think that his legacy here drops based on his performance this season. I just feel like he wasn't impressive. We had some high hopes for him coming in, and it did seem like in the beginning, you know, he could do some good things, and then it kind of just all just fell apart. And then he tried to quit essentially. And I feel like that should tarnish your legacy. So, you know, I don't know if I put him in top tier. I honestly would put him in the upper tier.
Yeah, and I apologize. I may have misspoke. He is in the bottom, at the bottom of the top tier. He's in the top tier.
You corrected later on. Yeah,
okay.
Like I think you said upper tier once, and then you said the bottom of the top tier. So yeah, he's in the he's at the bottom of the top tier, and I would not have him there. I think that the audience is so into like his looks and his you know, generosity of spirit. Like he is a super nice guy. Like, and that's great. But like as far as like what he gave us on the show, I don't feel like he gave us that much this season. Like he was so on and off with his gameplay, and like in terms of what he's capable of. Like I felt like we got cheated out of what Tyler could have given us.
Yeah, I do think this was a disappointing season, but I do still remember the joy he gave me in Big Brother 20 and the things that he did starting from week 1 and then moving like that whole like 2/3 of a season. You know, he gave a lot, and he was a big part of probably one of the better seasons in the last, 5-6 years. 5 years, 4 years, I don't know. There's a bit of a drought around Big Brother. Big Brother 20 has a moat around it. It's an island of paradise in a sea of misery. At least I think from the perspective of a lot of the fans. So I think, you know, he still has that. Like if Vanessa came back and bombed, she'd still have 17 in what she gave us in 17, right? And I kind of feel similarly about Tyler. But I cannot disagree with the fact that his legacy has been tarnished to a degree here, and I would not have not understood either if he had dropped down into the upper tier. But here we are with Tyler. Let's talk about his game. Tyler as a player. Now in Big Brother 20, I believe I don't have it in front of me because I don't think it was written down. I know I gave him a 9. I don't know if you guys remember what you gave him, but I think he got a 9 overall, so you must have given him 9s. Some of you must have given him 9s.
Likely.
Yeah.
The thing about Tyler, I guess I can go first on this one, like, is that he has all the tools. Like he understands what he needs to do for the most part. The one thing I will quibble with about his game is that he came into the season being like, well, I made too many deals last time. I don't want to make that many deals this time. He played softer this time, which is not what he needed to do on an all-star season. He needed to play harder, and he didn't grasp that. And I don't know that he still grasps that. Go ahead.
Here's my theory. I think Tyler knows that it wasn't the best idea to not make $1 billion final 2 deals. I think he knows that that's not the better way to play the game. But I think he knew that it made enough sense that it was an excuse to not play as hard because it was too much for him to play harder. He didn't want to. He didn't want to have to go through all the stuff that he went through the first time. We know he didn't even want to be there. So like this sort of like, well, look, let me try a different way. I won't play as hard. And it's kind of justified by this logic. and I won't have to do all that stuff and stress myself out and be yelled at and whatever. I think that part of him knew that this wasn't like the ideal strategy, but he went with it anyway because for him it was what he needed. It's my theory.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I guess I'm going to I'm going to go with the fact that I know that he is capable of playing to the best of his ability, and it took basically a perfect game from Cody to beat Tyler's previous best score in the stock watch. Like Tyler had like the score that I thought really no one could top because he was just so good for so long on that season, and then Cody comes along and plays, Big Brother 22, where he was like godlike almost. So I think I'm going to give Tyler a really good score. The question is like, do I want to give him the 9-10 or do I want to, because I think he's an amazing player, but I also think that there are some flaws to his game, and also the passion. It's the passion. That's what bugs me about it. He doesn't have the passion, and he sort of like kind of goes with it. Also at the end of Big Brother 20, that's the other thing. He turned down the passion. He could have won the game. Turned down the passion and like didn't want to like have to decide between his friends, so he threw the veto and let them decide. I'm gonna give him an 8.
That's where I'm at, and if exactly those reasons, Brent. When I gave him a 9, the reason I didn't give him a 10, because he'd played an extraordinary game. The reason I didn't give him a 10 was because of what I saw in the end game, which is that he kind of loosened his grip a bit. He kind of let go of the reins. He stopped working on Sam. He stopped working on some of these people that he had been doing maintenance on. He kind of let go of some of the control. He didn't have the killer instincts to take the shot at Casey and bring Angela to the end. He threw that Final Four veto. He let it play out the way it needed to play out. And those flaws were like, that concerns me. I cannot give him a 10 knowing that's there. I see him play in 22, and those flaws are exaggerated to the extreme. Those flaws have blossomed and become, they have lives of their own now. And it's a huge part of his game as a player in Big Brother 22. And I do think he played a worse game in 22 than he did in 20. And I think that is indicative of those flaws. I think that he doesn't have the heart or the passion to play to the fullest extent of his capability. He's too passive as a person, and that's not a bad thing necessarily as a person, but as a player, it does not really work for him. And so, knowing what I know now about him and his personality and the way that he will play the game, I agree. I gave him an 8.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys said, and I would give him a 7, which is sad because I really do think he's a great player if he wants to be, and I think that's the problem is I don't see him wanting it for the majority of the time, and so I think that me looking at his I guess if you're looking at this season, my rating would be a lot lower, but if you're adding in this previous season, that's why it gets raised, just because I think this season was really bad for him. I think he could have been good. And I think even after, the quit situation and all that, he could have turned it around. But I just felt like, I don't know. I just feel like he didn't want to. And I feel like that really plays into my game rating of him.
And I do want to say that the 8 is not only because of last season, the 9, great game, but even without the passion, when we talk about his flaws, he still did really well this season. I mean, like, nothing compared to his season 20 season, but he still came kind of close to winning this game. He also just needed a few. He didn't need a couple. He needed a few end game comp wins, a couple of things to break his way here or there, and he would have had a great chance of winning this game even without his heart in it. That's how talented a player I think he is naturally. But because he doesn't have that passion, that's going to be a detriment to his game. So that's why it's an 8 for me, even though like it's a very negative talking point around an 8, which is a very positive score. That's the explanation for the positive score. The audience in the preseason gave Tyler a 9. In the postseason, they gave him a 7, dropping down from the 9 to a 7. So it's going to be an 8 overall there for Tyler. Let's move on in the Legacy Watch. Above Tyler in the top tier, we have Kaser. Kaser in the top tier above
Interesting.
Tyler.
I would put, I honestly, and this may be controversial, I guess, but I would absolutely put Kaser in the pantheon.
Me too.
I think that I think that he is like, I mean, he's associated with Big Brother times a billion. I think that people talked a lot about him this season on social media and in the news and things like that, like the segments that they did on Kaser, where he talked about social issues. I thought that was really huge. I think that in Big Brother 6, he was, legendary, and in Big Brother 7, he was legendary, and even now he's legendary. I feel like you have to take that into account. And I think that especially when partnered with someone like Janelle, I just feel like it raises his profile. And even afterwards on social media, I think he's, still contributing to that legacy. And so I do think, for me at least, I would put him in the pantheon for sure, because
I mean, similar to Davon, and I think even more successfully than Davon, Kaser is 3 for 3 in terms of making an impression the seasons that he has been a part of. Like, people remember Kaser. He is such a large presence. He is, people remember Kaser from Big Brother 6 more than almost anyone else from that season. People remember Kaser and Dr. Will and Boogie and Janelle, but they still remember Kaser from season 7 All-Stars, and they're going to remember Kaser and Janelle and Cody and Nicole. And he is going to be remembered from this season, and he's never made the jury.
Right.
Like,
which is huge.
That's huge.
Yeah. To still have that, to still have people remembering you and thinking about you and talking about you. I mean, and to not have ever made the jury, that's very impressive.
He's the favorite player of the season on this form.
Yeah, exactly. And that,
All right.
We could go on for days talking about Kaser.
So that's the good stuff about Kaser. Let's talk about his game.
Yes, this is hard for me.
I guess I'll open. I mean, look, he's really smart. He's a smart guy. He was saying some great things at the start of the season about how big alliances form, and you can't let them form because they'll control the lines of communication. They'll run the game. Great points. But he couldn't get anyone to listen to him. And that's a problem. That's a problem he's often had in the game. His allies consistently don't trust him. In season 6, he has allies that don't trust him, don't listen to him. In season 7, he has allies that don't trust him, don't listen to him, defect. In season 22, he has allies that don't listen to him, don't trust him, and defect. And his enemies target him. Even though he's not much of a threat, they still go after him because he's such a big presence. He just can't. The thing about Kaser is that he can't help but be Kaser. And that's why I love him, and that's why he fails as a player. I gave him a 3. Because, I mean, look, there's something there. There are building blocks for a good player, but there's no connective tissue. It's never been able to be put together in any successful way.
So I want to I just need to itch my ear a little bit because
don't you dare.
I'm not gonna do it. Okay?
Taran's gone.
I'm not gonna
Taran's back.
But like, he's really bad. Okay, like, I'm gonna give him a 2. Like I thought you were going to give him a 2, actually. Like, he's really bad. Like, even the fact that he's smart comes off as snooty to some of these people. Like, they feel intimidated by him. Like, I'm not saying that I'm, all that. Like, who knows, like, how people see me. Like, if you never know how you're perceived by other people until you actually talk with other people. But we've seen Kaser 3 times now. And I feel like all 3 times, like, he just never is able to get along with the people that he needs to get along with to make a long run at the game. 3 times, and you've never made jury. And like, this time there was an extra competition for you to win, to be safe, and you still didn't make jury. Like, and also, like, the fact that him and Janie both swiped, that still bugs the shit out of me. Like, why didn't he stop her and say, like, no, you don't, like, obviously I'll save you, just let me swipe. Why? Yeah. And he's supposed to be smart, and he didn't tell her to do that. Like, come on, this is crazy.
To be fair, I think we also haven't seen Kaser play really like without Janelle. And I know, okay, yes, he was in the house without Janelle, but that's not the same because it starts you off on a bad foot when you already have such a strong ally there that everyone knows you're not going to go against and stuff like that. So I do think it would be interesting to, like, if we're just looking at what we're talking about here, which is if you just like place these players in 100 seasons, how will they do? Like, is Janelle there or is he by himself? And I do think that makes a difference for me. However, yes, I do think that he has never really shown strength when it comes to, I guess his gameplay and going far in the game, as we said. But, I do see that he has good reads and I feel like he's so smart. And I feel like if he could just like piece it all together, it would be great for him. Unfortunately, we haven't really seen that, but also we've never really seen him enter a house without having Janelle there. So I don't know. And so I got to give him a 4.
Yeah. I think he is a player who, if he made it into a majority group, if he made it into one of those big alliances at the start, he'd know what to do. He'd be able to handle it decently, and he would not blow up his own spot. It's going to be very difficult for him to get into those groups. He's always going to be, fighting the power, and that's going to be a dangerous spot for him. So the audience in the preseason gave Kaser a 6. In the postseason, they gave Kaser a 5.
A 3. A 5. A 5. Oh my gosh. You guys are such softies. Like, he's really bad at the game, you guys. Like, we can put him in the pantheon, or I mean, I personally wouldn't. I would actually have him in the top tier. I would have him in the top tier. I wouldn't have him in the pantheon. Like, I feel like, dude, you don't know how many. Like, I went to work and like people know that I podcast about Big Brother, and they're like, because they talk to me about Big Brother, and they're like. They don't know who Kaser was. They're like, who's that guy Kaser? I've never seen him before. Like, they didn't even like him that much this season when they watched him. Like, so.
Well, they're wrong.
I know they're wrong. You're right. They're wrong. But that's how some of the people out on, as Probst would say, the people out on the street, that's what they think. Like, they didn't remember Kaser, and even when they got to know him, they didn't like him all that much. So, although
I do have to say, like, people like my mom who have been watching all this time love Kaser. So huge fan of Kaser from my family. God. So, there are people out there who saw him on his seasons and this season and are like, go Kaser. So
yeah.
All right. Next on the Legacy Watch, in the top tier above Kaser, we have Janelle and Cody left.
Yes.
Those are the only two. Who is going to be next? What's the guess on placement here?
It has to be Cody.
I think Cody's top tier, Janelle is Pantheon.
Cody's top tier, Janelle's Pantheon.
Well, you are right about one thing, and that is that Cody is above Kaser in the top tier. He has moved
Nobody's in the Pantheon?
We haven't gotten to
He hasn't
Janelle
told us yet.
Oh, I thought you were saying you're right about one thing, meaning that we're right that Cody's in top tier, but that Janelle is not in Pantheon.
He's addressing
Well, be clearer.
I'm being ambiguous to build suspense.
Well, yes, of course. But yeah, you freaked me out there.
Well, yeah. Melissa's the audience, only she's able to speak.
Right?
They're
Exactly,
supposed to be like, what about Janelle? And I'm going to be like,
that's what the chat
you
is.
don't know.
Like, we'll
Beverly in the
see.
chat, in all capital letters, Beverly's like, oh, Janelle didn't make it back. What?
See ya.
Janelle's not in the Pantheon.
The voice of the people speaks again.
You know what? I will say, Melissa, I looked at Christina's charts, and this season, I actually was the closest to the audience rating all season long during the Stock Watch.
There's no way. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You're not the voice of the people. You can't steal my post like that.
Maybe you should be rating closer to where the audience is rating. I don't know. Maybe you should just be more in tune with what the people want,
right.
like me.
You know what? It's fine. We'll just switch. I'll be the robot, and that's fine.
Right.
The strategy robot.
All right. So here's Cody. Definitely a jump from where he was before. He was in the upper tier. And he is not that far away from the Pantheon. I don't know if he ever will make it to the Pantheon. He's still enough of a stretch away. But here it is. You know, he is in second place overall with a dominant win. He is definitely going to be talked about as one of the best winners, one of the best players to ever play. That he is going to be in that conversation, and that is definitely going to do well for him legacy-wise. Personally, I don't know. I don't know if I can put Cody in the Pantheon, even if he is up there with Derek. Even if I go, you know what, he's better than Derek, which is possible in a conversation that I'm interested to have when we do a winner rankings. But even if he does, I'm not sure I can put him there. And it kind of comes back to what I said before, where like he's so well-rounded of a player that he's just never going to give me good TV.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's legacy. Like Derek even made a boring season for many people, sure, but he was Derek. He was the undercover detective. He was he ran that season like a mafia boss, but he was a detective undercover. And like I said, like he has to make up for like deficiencies in his game with other things, where Cody is just like he's just like the golden boy. He's just like yep and whoop. Yeah. And it's just like, I mean, yeah, you're good, but is that Pantheon? Is that
No,
legacy? Like,
it's not Pantheon.
There?
Yeah, it's not Pantheon.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree.
He's
And
an
also,
amazing
I think
player,
it's,
though.
yeah, no, exactly. But the thing is that, you know, if you're also looking at his previous season as well, like, I mean, I think if you're looking at like Kaser and Janelle, you're looking at their previous seasons. If you're looking at Cody, you're looking at previous season. I don't see him being remembered for his previous season, aside from, you know, making that mistake in the end where he cost himself the game. So I do feel like even though he played a really good game this season, I don't put him in the Pantheon. I do move him ahead of where I would have put him at the start of this season, but I wouldn't put him up there. He's definitely top tier, though.
Yeah, I think near the top of the top tier, which is about where he is. It's exactly probably where I'd place him. I mean, he's definitely up there. He's just not one of the select few, I think, Pantheon-wise, legacy-wise. But let's talk about his game. Because game-wise, I'm very high on Cody. Let me tell you. I talked about season 20, and I talked about how I could not give Tyler the 10 because there was something there. There was a flaw there that made me feel worried about potential future seasons, and I just don't see that with Cody. The biggest criticism I have of Cody is one that I can't see. Maybe he isn't able to get out of scrapes that I haven't seen him get into because he's good enough to avoid scrapes. And if that's my biggest criticism, I don't really have much of a criticism. I gave him a 10. There's just no significant flaw in his game. His biggest flaws from his first season, where he also had a great performance, and I want to give him a 9, were his jury management and his loyalty. And this season, he won unanimously by cutting an ally. Like, he easily plugged up those 2 holes, and I genuinely think he is the most well-rounded player we've ever seen. And it's a 10 for me. It's just like, it's what it is.
I feel like I agree with what you're saying. However, for me, like, I do feel like I am missing the ability to get out of scrapes, or the ability to, like, you know, face adversity. And we haven't really seen that. And so that's why I feel like I am missing that. I also feel like I do have to modify his score just based on like the pre-game relationships that he has, whether or not that's pre-gaming, whatever. He did come into this with pre-existing relationships more so than other people in the house. And so I do think that affects my rating, just because we don't know what would have happened had he come into a season with people that he didn't have a relationship with, or that he didn't know. I don't know if he would have performed as well. I do think he still played really well. And I do think that he played really well his first season. So I don't think this is some fluke, or that it's only because he has pre-existing relationships. However, I do think that affects my rating, and I don't think I can give him the 10. So I've got to give him a 9.
I'll give him a 10. Ethan in the chat says he outplayed Enzo socially. Let that sink in. The guy who everyone praises to be so good socially didn't even get one jury vote. I don't think that Cody has to be a perfect A+ player to get the 10 for me, as long as he's like, 95% or above. And I think the fact that he hasn't had a chance to show himself, to show his work, and get out of a scrape here or there, I feel like that's small potatoes compared to everything else he does so well. And the fact that, we talk about the pregame relationships, but like there were other people that had pregame relationships. I mean, I know that Davon knew a lot of people that were going to be on this season, and look what happened to her. Like
Janelle and
yeah, exactly.
Deni
I think the list goes on. Like the thing about Cody is that people just love being around him. And look, some of that, I'll be real with you guys. Some of that, the fact that he's so freaking beautiful. Like he's such a sweet guy. He's got a great smile.
It's honestly, that's a part of his rating.
It really is. Like people just want to be around him. They feel comfortable around him. Like we're human beings that sort of like, to be blunt, beauty. He's just a beautiful man. Like you just, that it makes you feel better about yourself just being around him, and like I don't see anybody, even if he was on a season of complete strangers and there was no pre-gaming whatsoever, I still feel like he would be very competent. I mean, he was the first time he played. So
I think he would do really well, but I think that it would be risky I think that people would be wary of him because I think they would see him as a big comp threat. And I don't think people would have that loyalty to him. I think they would see him as a threat and be like, we need to do something about this. Whereas I do feel like this season he had those pre-existing relationships. And so people didn't want to target him but from the get-go, from the jump.
Though, who would have targeted him that didn't because of a pre-existing relationship?
Anyone that he worked with prior to this season. I just feel like I don't know the exact people that worked with him or worked with other people, but I do think that affects my rating of everyone really. I mean, I don't think this is just Cody. I think that this affects my rating of each player just because. And so I think if we're looking at a situation where, in your survey, you said 10 is Dan Giesling level. I don't see him on that level. So I can't give him a score of Dan Giesling level. That's the thing is like, he played a great game, but I don't see him as that sort of player.
Yeah, I hear you on that. In that, Dan has more magic tricks than Cody. Okay. So then if you're looking at it from that point of view, you're like, well, I can't give him a 10 because he's not on Dan's level as far as the magic tricks go. But the thing is that I don't feel like Cody needs the magic tricks. Dan needs the magic tricks because Dan's messier. Dan has flaws in his game.
So I think for me, I'm
in a spot where Dan has to do a magic trick, Cody wins a competition. And just like that, it's like that. And Cody is in fewer spots where he even needs to win a competition or have a magic trick.
I'm not saying he has to have a magic trick. I'm saying that this is a season where everybody came in already knowing people. And I think that affects my rating of somebody. I think that I don't think that I can, when I'm rating these people in this situation, I'm also thinking about the players that have come before them, Dan, Derek, Will, everybody, whether or not we've rated them. And I'm thinking to myself, in this situation, how am I comparing them to other people? And I think that, in my opinion, I think that Derek, Dan, and Dr. Will get 10s. I think that Cody is on their level? No.
Well,
I think that because he played a similar game to their level this season, where he has pre-existing relationships with people, that is different to me because this is his second season. This isn't his first season. So I do think that docks a point for me, is that this isn't his first season. He played a good game or a great game, whatever you want to call it, this season. But I think that if we're looking at the entirety of the Big Brother players and house guests, I don't think that he is a 10.
I just want to quickly say that I fully respect the 9 that you're giving Cody, and when I rebut your argument, it is not because I am trying to convince you of anything.
No, that's because, fine. I have enjoyed talking about it. It's fine.
Because I know that this reflects, a perspective that the audience does have, and I do think there are worthy discussions to come from it, right? So I don't want the audience to think oh, they're fighting over 1 point, what are they doing? But I will say about Dr. Will, season 7. He pre-gamed way more than
But he
Cody
didn't
did.
win.
Right, but that's
So, like,
Dr. Will's more impressive season, right? Like his Big Brother 2 game was not overly impressive. And so when we're
I
comparing
don't know.
him to
I thought
Dr.
it
Will,
was impressive. I thought it was impressive, and I
Right.
think that for me, I think that like there are other factors that come into play for Dr. Will, where it's like, you know, his influence over people, number one, the fact that he was able to then come in for a second season with Boogie, like basically, essentially, you know, it's as if Cody and Derek came into this season together, and you know, and then they ended up getting to the end. Like, I just feel like they wouldn't have. I feel like I would absolutely see people targeting Derek and Cody right away. And so we don't even see that. We can't even judge it on that. But essentially, like, Will got super far in his second season with his partner in crime that everyone knew was in an alliance, and yet they still were able to make it to the end and still able to convince everyone that they were part of Chilltown. I thought that the gameplay was really impressive. Did he win? No. But I think that the gameplay itself was very impressive to me. And I think the fact that he won on his first season is also hugely impactful on my rating of Dr. Will. And so I think that, like, do you win on your first season? And I think that definitely influences the way that I judge things. So for example, Nicole, she did not win on her first season. Ian won on his first season. And so even though he played really, really terribly this season, I do have to rate him higher just because he did win on his first season and he won against Dan. So I do think that, like, if we were only rating him for this season alone, not considering anything else, thinking about his relationship with these people, this wouldn't affect anything else of our other ratings of other seasons, past seasons, future seasons, whatever. And it was just this season alone, I probably would give him a 10. But when I'm taking into account the other seasons and the other players and the fact that he's played twice, it does make me give him a 9 instead. And I think that if we were giving higher ratings than a 10, then yeah, sure, I'd give him a 10, whatever, who cares? But I think if I have to think about the other players who I think personally deserve a 10, I don't necessarily put him in that group. And that's just the way I think about it.
Right. So what I'm trying to say about Dr. Will's season 7 game, right? In terms of the pregame stuff, right? In that season, there were much bigger targets than Dr. Will and Mike Boogie in that season. Many bigger targets. Dr. Will did not have the reputation that he did now at that time. In addition to that, he found out the cast list. They pre-gamed. There were genuine money sharing schemes. Like everything that everybody conspiracy theoried over this season was true of that season to a significant degree, and he still lost it. And then this season, many of the jurors in the postseason have talked about one of the reasons why they respected Cody's game so much more than even Nicole's game was that none of them had a connection to him in the preseason. Deni, in fact, was one of the people saying that in particular, that she had no idea who he was prior to entering the house. But in the game, he won her over the people she knew, like Janelle and Nicole in real life. And everybody felt that way. Everybody said in the jury, yeah, I didn't know him coming in, but he won me over and I trusted him and I wanted to work with him. Whereas Nicole did have a couple relationships and those relationships were stolen by Cody, who they didn't know. So if the jury is saying that, I have no reason to not believe them. And I really think that the relationship stuff has been significantly overblown, especially in comparison to the level of pre-gaming that often happens in Big Brother in the past. So that's what I wanted to say about the pre-gaming stuff. I do think your first game versus second game stuff is very, very valid. And it's one of the things that's holding me back from saying, when we talk about Cody versus Derek, stuff like that, that's going to be something that I'm very interested in talking about. First season versus second season, because I do not think that Cody is a 10 in his first season, but I do think he is in his second season, right? So that's where it gets a little interesting.
I think it's also weighing more for me the first season. I think that when I'm looking at people's games, I'm looking like, well, how did they first do when they were just dropped in a house, like versus now that they either, have, I don't know, like had more conversations with other people or watched other people win or whatever it may be. and had the experience themselves of being in the house and knowing what it's like. I think that for me, I weight more heavily their first season than their second season. I think that it's great when you improve. I mean, to be honest, I absolutely would not have given a Cody a 9 in this first season. I think there were many flaws in his game, and I think that he really followed Derek most of the time. I think there was a lot of times when Cody was like, well, I'm gonna confront them, I'm gonna pop off, I'm gonna do XYZ, and Derek always had to hold him back, and Derek always would talk like basically give Cody their strategy. If Derek hadn't pulled Cody under his wing, I do not think Cody would have gotten to the end. And that's for sure. I think if Derek could pick anyone else, I think that person would have gotten to the end. So I do think that I do think his first season is also weighing on me in terms of not wanting to give him a 10. And so I think it's not just, and I don't want people to sit there thinking that oh, Melissa just thinks he pre-gamed and that's why she's rating him low. That's not the case. I just said that's something I have to take into consideration, is that he has outside relationships. But I don't think that alone is making my decision for me. There are so many other factors.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. I personally would give him the 9 in season 16, and then especially when I gave him a 9 in 16, I'm definitely going to give him a 10 in 22. And I think the fact that we're comparing him to people like Dr. Will and Dan Giesling is telling in and of itself, right? And I would even say, and people know I like Dan a lot, but if I took Dan right now and Cody right now and I stuck them in Big Brother 23, I don't know. I might put my money on Cody, to be honest. Because Dan still has a bigger target on his back, and he's less capable of winning himself out of trouble. You know what I mean? Right. The fact that it's even a question to me is part of what's playing into this, right? So
that's fun. Yeah, exactly. Can I say something really quickly?
Please.
Just the fact that we all gave Enzo 8s is what makes me want to give Cody the 10, because I'm like, he's not just 1 point better than Enzo. Like, Enzo's good, but Cody's amazing. Cody owned everything this season, and combined with how good he was on his original season, and again, like I remember going back to the original reset week on Big Brother 16, he was up to be evicted. Like, he was on the block with only 5 people left in the game, an enigmatic presence that people loved in the house, and they were not going to get rid of him there. They were going to get rid of Victoria. Like he's got something socially. People just love this kid. And then he comes on this season and runs roughshod over them. Like, I can't not give him the 10, but I totally respect your 9, Melissa. And it's totally cool.
Yeah, again, this is more of a surrogate argument for the arguments rather than us trying to convince Melissa out of a 9, which I think is, again, perfectly valid, and what the audience gave Cody. So there it is from the audience. But that is going to be a 10 overall for Cody.
So the audience gave him a 9?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
All right. And of course, that means... Whoops. That means the last person on the Legacy Watch is Janelle. Is she in the top tier? Is she in the Pantheon? She is in the top tier. The top of the top tier.
What?
Is Janelle.
Ugh, that is so beyond wrong. It should be Janelle and Kaser in the Pantheon. She's Janelle. She is Big Brother. Her, Dan.
I agree.
Dr. Will, Rachel, even Jeff. I just feel like there are so many people that you think of when you think of Big Brother, and Janelle is she's been on so many seasons. She's Janelle. This is insane to me.
Melissa, I feel like this is people they saw the finale, they saw the results, and this was the runoff election, and people the fans didn't come out for her.
This really was. So Janelle, this is where Janelle finishes basically where she started here. Actually just a little bit lower than where she started in the preseason. Just about a point down from where she was when she started. And she started here at the very top of the top tier. Over the course of the season, she moved up. She moved up well into the Pantheon, halfway through the Pantheon, and then fell back down. It's like a curve. I'm sure Christina will have charts about it. And the only explanation I have received from people who are telling me this is why I've changed my mind on Janelle, I can't say this is the official explanation, but it's the only one I've seen from people who have told me this is why. they say that they have kind of soured on her social media presence because she is a little over the top negative, especially about Nicole and some of the other players that she played with, and it's just not their thing, which is a little weird to me because Janelle is, bye bye bitches. But if you liked her for that, then I don't know why you don't like her for this. But to respect those people.
I can answer that. The reason why people like bye bye bitches is because she did it to them. She did it to their face. Like they were being mean to her, and she did it to their face in the house. It didn't play well on Instagram when she's coming for Nicole while Nicole's stuck in the house and can't respond, and she kept going after her. Not a good look.
I feel like for me, the reason why that doesn't impact me is because I don't really pay attention to the drama on social media with the players. Yes. Yeah, it's like that doesn't affect me just because I don't look at it. So that's why. It
is also a little bit like, why is a pantheon like, why would a god deign to dirty themselves on Earth to spite a mortal? You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if she was in the Pantheon, she would be doing her own stuff in the Pantheon. She would be above all of that, right? Yeah. I think that's kind of the thing a little bit.
That's true. I mean, yeah, I do think that it would be better for her legacy. And I feel like it helps Kaser at least, or at least from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like Kaser is involving himself in any of that and kind of is just playing nice with everybody. Maybe I've missed something. I don't know. But it just I feel like that's the way to kind of handle it. And I feel like,
just so people in the chat know, I would put her in the Pantheon. I'm not telling you guys the reasons why I would not put her in the Pantheon.
We're trying to explain the audience.
I'm trying to explain to you why other people may not have liked her and might have held her feet to the fire a little bit negatively in the Legacy Watch because they didn't like her social media presence after she was out of the house for a few weeks and got just a touch bitter. But Bye Bye Bitches was fun, but bitterness is not.
Yeah, I do wonder if with time in the social media presence, she's not talking about Nicole in a couple of years, unless she is, in which case, but assuming she's not, I wonder if this comes back up or if the initial boost was sort of a mirage in the first place. But that's where she's going to stand in the Legacy Watch. Let's talk about her rating as a player. Now, I know, because Brent had her in the best to never win list, and I did not, that Brent is probably higher on Janelle than I am. So Brent, how do you feel?
I'm actually pretty high on her. Compared to, not high overall, but high in terms of the scores that we could possibly give her, because I have an understanding where I think you guys probably are. Okay. So, the thing about Janelle, I feel like, is that she had a couple of people who just for some reason wanted her out big time this season. Nicole and Deni. Season. Do you think so? I don't feel like it was that way necessarily on 7. They loved her.
No, 7. They wanted 7. They made deals preseason to get her out.
I know, but I feel like they respected her.
I mean, they came to respect her because of her comp wins. I think 6 was the one that she had the least amount of people wanting to get her out. And
even then they didn't like her. So, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like everybody on the season kind of liked Janie except for freaking Nicole and Deni. Cody didn't even want to get rid of Janie at the beginning.
Yeah, but that's the thing for me, is that I do think that most people on the season gave her a fair shake. Most people wanted to try to work with her, and then one by one it kind of closed off. And I do think that she got a bad shake. I do think that there were a couple of people in there that were not nearly as open to working with her as a neutral person would have been. And I think in particular her connection to Deni and trusting Deni too much was a huge detriment to her game. But I don't think she did herself any favors either socially, and I think that's kind of been the story of her career as a Big Brother player. Season 6, season 7, season 14, and this season all have examples of a failure to really build connections.
I'm gonna give her 5. I feel like I'm gonna give her 5. I feel like she has it within her. She's gone to the end of the game twice before. And I don't even count 14, right? So I'm looking at this season, if Dani and Nicole didn't have such a hard on to get rid of her, I feel like she does okay. I feel like she makes a run at it here. People enjoy Janie, so I'm gonna give her 5.
Well, there you go. Now I feel like I tricked you because I gave her a 6.
Oh, okay, cool. I feel better. Okay, I feel better. Okay, good.
And here's why I do think that the 6 is largely coming from her first couple of performances. In particular, the comp ability in season 7. She was, again, socially not the best in season 7, but she was like Ian, only even more so, like just completely unavailable to be evicted at all in season 7. Like there's like 1 or 2 weeks that it was possible to get rid of her because she won so often. And you do have to kind of consider the fact that there was Dr. Will throwing every competition, Boogie sometimes throwing competitions to her, people who wanted her to win because they were using her as a sort of shield and weapon. And in season 6, she was not like a super comp beast. She kind of like lasted the longest because she seemed the least threatening. And then in season 14, she went out pretty early. Season 22, she's not really winning any competitions. So there's not a lot there, but there is something there when she gets on a roll, and she did come close twice, and that is not something that can be ignored. I think that she has a will to play and a will to like fight and be there that really does matter, and winning those competitions, and if she gets to the end, she has a great chance of winning because she's always got that story, and she is good at the competition. I mean, she still holds many records for the competition wins that she has, even though she's not really been able to replicate that success lately. I would not rate present day Janelle a 6. I would give present day Janelle probably a 5 at best, but considering the history, the overall position as a player, it's a 6 for me.
Yeah, this one's hard. I don't know. I feel like I'm between a 6 and a 5. Can you tell me what the audience did?
The audience in the preseason gave Janelle an 8.
Wow.
In the postseason, they gave Janelle. Why is it always so hard to find Janelle's name? A 6.
I thought you were just being dramatic. I'm like,
yeah, I feel like I was going to rate her lower, but I think what you're saying rings true, and I think it rang true for all of my other ratings in ranking people like lower essentially. But I was mainly thinking about Big Brother 14 when I was thinking about Janelle, and so I didn't really think about Big Brother 6 and Big Brother 7. And I think those are huge for her. So I do think that, and I think even this season, I think if she didn't have that target on her back, then I think that she could have gone really far. I think that she's very smart, and I think that she has good reads on everything. I just feel like she's got the target on her back, and if she can't back it up with comp wins, then she's kind of screwed. I'm gonna give her a 5 because I also have to think about the fact that like I do God, that's hard. It's so hard.
Come on, Melissa, it's a 3-hour show. Let's go.
I'm sorry. I'll just give her a 5. I want to give her a 6, but I just feel like if you put her in random seasons, I feel like she's going to stand out. She's always going to possibly have to fight for her life, no matter what it is.
Fair. She's
so I think that
of fading into the background.
Right, exactly. And so I think that it's a situation where it's like either win out or lose. And I think that's the struggle for her is like if she can't win out, which she can't always win out. So, I gotta give her a 5.
All right, so there it is. Average scores here: Cody a 10, Enzo an 8, Nicole Franzel a 7, Christmas a 5, Memphis a 7, Tyler an 8, Deni a 5, David a 2, Kevin a 4, Davon a 4, Ian a 5, Bailey a 5, Kaser a 4, Janelle a 6, Nicole Anthony a 4, and Keisha a 5. And then here in the Legacy Watch, we have in the top tier Janelle, Cody, Kaser, and Tyler in that order. Then in the upper tier, Ian, Nicole Franzel, Enzo, and Davon. In the middle tier, Memphis, Deni, and Keisha. Then in the low tier, Bailey, Kevin, Christmas, and Nicole Anthony. And then in the bottom tier, all by himself, is David. So there it is. That's all of that. stuff out of the way, let's quickly run through some of these other questions for you guys. How did we rate the season as a whole? I'm going to say I've been doing great, I think, so far. I don't think the audience has hated me yet because I've been pretty in line with them. So here, now they can hate me. For me, this season's an 8.
I feel like the season's like a. Is it okay? So let's ask this question: Is it an average season of Big Brother? No, I feel like it was below average. We got below average luck. We got below average drama. So it's
usually you get one HOH.
Yeah. So like
I would give it a 3.
I can't even give it a 5. I like it had some interesting gameplay. Like basically the question is it a 3 or a 4?
I give it a 3.
I give it a 4 because it stuck the landing.
All right. The audience gave it a 4.2. I just want to say, an average Big Brother season for me is probably a 7 or an 8. I mean, I give most of them great rating. I mean, I love Big Brother, no matter what it is. So when you said, is it above or below average? I'm like, well, is it a 7 or an 8?
Yeah, right.
And I'm not going to let anyone tell me what I am allowed to do with my own personal ratings. The audience gave it a 4.2. They gave the episodes a 4.1 and the feeds a 3.4. Now, a little bit of perspective here. If I move to Big Brother Canada 7, you want to guess what the average overall season rating was for Big Brother Canada 7?
It's got to be pretty low. I'd say like a 3.5.
6.2.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
really?
Really?
Big Brother 21 was a 5.5.
I'm trying to think. I guess like we had like Dane at the final 5. Like
Yeah,
I
I
think
feel
the
like Big
ending
Brother
of
Canada
this,
7 had a good ending.
the ending of the season, I think, really matters with these end of the season polls because that's what's in their memory the most.
Right, because if you ask like halfway through, people are probably going to be like, "Oh, it sucked."
Yeah. All right. Then I said, did the jury make the right call? This is probably the most lopsided question I've ever asked. 1.8% said no.
Yeah, it's a yes for me.
I said, where do you rank the season as a whole? Where do you rank the season? 50% say bottom tier. 35% say middle tier. 10% said worst season ever. If you I had the optional question, the exact position. What is the exact position in the season rankings? The mode here, the most popular answer was I think this is right, 16 out of 21. The average was actually about 14. So not the worst. That was a discussion we had earlier.
Yeah, I know, right?
I asked, what's the best duo in Big Brother history? Just because that was a topic of conversation. 45% still say Chilltown. I don't know if they heard about Boogie.
Apparently not.
Not a lot of love for the Renegades. Only 7% to the Renegades.
It was Dan. Like,
Yeah.
you know, come on. Like, the Renegades was Dan. That's the thing.
I asked the audience, how do you feel about doing All-Stars again? We've done All-Stars.
No.
Should we ever do it again? Out of 100, how do you feel? Do you love it? Do you hate it? It got a 59 out of 100 score. So they're leaning toward like, maybe.
Okay, maybe.
I guess it depends. Is it an all-winner season or something like that, or is it?
Like, I just want some new people. I don't want to live like I don't want because like the thing you know here's the thing. The thing about bringing people back is like it's always the question about like, are they going to be able to rectify their mistakes? Are they going to be able to right their past wrongs? Spoiler alert: no, they're not.
No, they won't. Everyone will repeat the same mistakes,
and
it will just be bad.
Make the same mistakes they always made and play the same freaking game. That's what they're gonna do. Like, I give Cody credit for at least like modifying his game a little bit.
All right. I asked, how do you feel about the safety suite twist? It actually got the same score, 59 out of 100. Well, maybe. It was an all right twist. A twist I did not hate. In fact, I thought it was actually kind of good.
I'd be okay with it. Yeah, I agree. Like,
What about-
especially if you're like, here's the thing. About the safety suite. Like, I don't think they're going to bring it back, but if they could bring back some version of this, basically, where you get an extra chance to earn safety, like, I feel like that gives people who are fun TV, who might be like ostracized early, a chance to reach out and grab safety. A lot of people forget the beginning of Big Brother 19. Josh grabbed that golden apple and would have been evicted first. And like, how different that season would have been without Josh there. Like, I mean, you know, I like putting out little things like that. It doesn't, like, the HOH still has power. They can still do what they want and nominate people and get rid of people, but just give a little extra chances for safety early on. I'm okay with that.
You know, when I was prepping for this podcast, I went back to our Big Brother 21 or Big Brother 20 wrap up podcast because, like I said, the ratings weren't written down, and I needed to listen to us speak to hear the ratings again. And it was a 3.5 hour podcast, and I was like, "What? That's not gonna happen."
Oh, Taran.
I knew it was when you started saying we're doing I didn't realize we're gonna be doing ratings for everybody, because usually I do my ratings ahead of time. I honestly didn't. I just sort of forgot that we do this. I really did. So like about like 9:40 when you when you start asking for ratings, and then I realized, oh my God, we're doing all 16 people. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I thought this was going to be like a little hour and a half check-in. We're going to be here for 3.5 hours. Like,
That's
which
what
is
we're here.
fine.
Look,
I feel like
it's been
every
2 weeks.
first roundtable and every last roundtable are always the longest.
Yeah.
Look,
And then you get like last week's or whatever, where it's like we have 3 people to rate. We're like, okay, done.
the people that are still here listening to us are the people I think that want this to be 5 hours.
Oh, I'm totally, and I remember when I was, well, I'll just say this. When I listen to other podcasts, like when I'm listening to Know-It-Alls, or I'm listening to other things, when I'm listening to the B&B, like I love it when they're longer, because then I have more content. Like I can always stop and come back to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, but it's like, I listen to it, and then like if it's only like an hour and 15 minutes and you get to the end, you know, and you listen to it on, you know, time and a half speed or something, and you know, you're done in 40 minutes. You're like, yeah.
All right. How do you feel about the Big Brother basement powers twist?
What? Did that even
I thought it
happen?
was fine.
Yeah.
Whatever, sure.
40,
Yeah,
which
I
I
thought
think
it
is
was fine.
high.
Yeah, that was terrible. Moving on.
Yeah.
And then the powers were terrible. Dani was right to go in the diary room and bitch to them about how terrible her power was. She was right.
I guess I thought it was fine because it didn't really do anything.
I guess, yeah, but whatever.
What do you feel about the BB
Aside
neighbor?
from David's.
BB neighbor adding prizes to competitions. And see, I like the adding prizes to competitions part, but the BB neighbor was so superfluous.
Yeah.
That was like
I think that they should have done more with it. I mean, like,
Yeah,
if you're
they had
make people tempted with prizes, give them prizes. Don't just do this
underused
one
him.
thing.
They really could have had fun with that, and it was so mailed in. Like,
Yeah, we talked about that at the time. He should have been taunting them with
Yes.
prizes.
yes.
Triple eviction. How do you feel about the triple eviction? It got a 43 out of 100, which I also think is high, considering.
It was better than it could have been, because they could have done it the Big Brother Canada way, but it wasn't good for the game, and I don't think they should keep it. I'd much prefer 2 double evictions, because then you get 2 nights of fun. So might as well give us that.
I can't believe they didn't do.
Yeah. I asked, how did you feel about the competitions overall? Not the outcomes of the competitions, but the actual, because last season we saw a lot of dissatisfaction with the prevalence of physical
I feel like
competitions.
they were better.
Yeah, it got about a 50 out of 100. People were just like,
Yeah.
they're fine,
Yeah.
which I think is an improvement from last season, which was like, they sucked. Right? So, all right. Those are the questions on the survey. There's one more thing we have to update you on, though, from the Stock Watch, and that is the final leaderboard. Who won? Who won
Let's
the Stock
see.
Watch? Who did it?
Well, I'm sure Taran won amongst the 3 of us, but
Well,
who won
look.
overall?
I definitely didn't win because I didn't change my stock, which I should have.
All right. Well, here's the leaderboard. Scargate, the winner.
Scargate.
And these are the new badges for
Ooh.
that we've got here. So what this is, the badge itself, the outline, that's going to be consistent for all seasons, and then inside of it, there's going to be a little icon to represent
Is that a
the
soccer
winner.
ball?
That is a soccer ball with stars.
Oh, for Cody?
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Cody.
Okay, cool.
So
Okay, cool.
Scargate, first place with a new shiny badge. Liv in second place. Liv, a mod on my Twitch channel. Then I believe this person said their name is just the letters MOHTTR, not
Oh,
Mutter.
I thought it was Mother. Thought it was Mother the whole time.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Third
Yeah.
place. Then Patouche and K. Debec in the top 5, and then Jack Sinif. I just call him Sin. Sin, Tone, Wendy, and Kat in the top 10. Those are the
Can you scroll down
winners.
a little bit? I can't see the
Oh, yep, sorry.
That's cool. Yeah.
There you go. And
congratulations to those top 3. You guys were in the top 3 for a long time.
Yeah, that was like,
That was watching like
There,
a
you
march to
got
the
it.
end. That was like Big Brother 22, man. Like Scargate, Liv, and Mother like marching to the end of the stock watch.
man, I was in 3rd place like 4 weeks ago.
where are you now?
I fell down to 61st. 61st.
Yikes.
Here are all my badges, though. Look at them.
My
They're so
God,
shiny.
it's like
Tooth.
look at all my
That's
badges.
funny.
A tooth for Dane, a watermelon for Jackson, and a mask for Big Brother Canada 8.
Aw.
Mask.
Aw.
Yes, there I am. I was top 5%. I missed top 1% by like 4 or 5 places. No, more than that. 6 places.
Oh, you were close.
Places.
Yeah.
Very close.
Close. You do get badges for the top percentages. They just don't show up on the leaderboard. They show up on your profile down here. Top 5% BB22. So that's how it works, guys. Thank you to Louie for all of the help with the badges.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Some fun stuff there. Brent, your final placement here was 3,070th. Top 75%.
I went with Enzo. I did. I tried to make it. I tried to manifest it.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah.
Melissa lands in 2,325th, top 50%.
Yeah, I forgot to do anything. So
Stayed with Enzo.
like the past like 3 times I forgot to sell or do anything. So yeah, I kind of lost it on that one. But Melissa bought. Look at that.
but
I'll just pretend like that's me.
Melissa's Deni's still went below you. They went Enzo.
All right, okay, I'm good then. I'm good. As long as Melissa's Denny's is below me, and as long as I take credit for Melissa bought, then we are all good.
All right, there it is. Thank you to all of the players of the Stockwatch this season. It was a lot of fun to have you. There were over 7,000 players, I believe, or close to users at one point that participated in the Stockwatch. So congratulations to everyone who did succeed. There was a lot of competition. And
right. We had good times.
Yeah.
We had good times. Melissa, with your Enzo score when Taran fell out, and I gave Davon a 7 when like you guys were like, how did that happen? Like there was some fun stuff along the way.
There's some
like,
shocks. There are some surprises.
gotta keep it fun.
there it
Yeah,
is.
got to keep you on your toes.
All right. Well, that's that for the Stockwatch. Again, thank you to everyone who helped with the Stockwatch. Timothy, Jeff, thank you both. Thank you, Louie, for the badges. Alexandra, who runs this wonderful chart and helps with the ratings on the site. And of course, Christina, who does a lot of data crunching with all the numbers, the raw data, and she turns it into something cool. They are all so great, so helpful, and help make the Stockwatch what it is. So thank you guys again for all of the participation and the fun that we all had. It was the journey more than the destination. Journey before destination, guys. And that's what we got. That's what we got. We are looking forward now to an off season where one of us here is going to be playing, or has played, but will be playing when we watch, a game of Sequester. A live game of Sequester. Brent was gone for one of these roundtables, and the reason he was gone is because he spent something like 10 days or less, 8 days, playing a live game of Sequester. The production value is good. You'll be able to follow it. I promise.
Yes.
Check it out. I will be covering it with some guests as we watch Brent fail miserably trying to play a social strategy game. It's gonna be great.
So exciting. I'm very excited to watch it. I can't wait.
And also, like, remember that Taran did the interviews.
I did.
So, like, you'll want to tune in. The cast is dropping tomorrow, by the way. So that's been announced on the Sequester account. I'm not gonna have to keep it a secret anymore. the people that I've been playing with or that I played the game with. So that's going to be revealed tomorrow at 11:11 in the morning Eastern time on the Sequester Access account, and you guys can tune in to find out everybody who's on the season, including the person that I mentioned, who is more notable than me. Melissa, do you? Now, if you've been spoiled at all, do not guess. But if you have no clue, I would like to hear your guesses as to who you think this person is.
I have literally no idea.
You have no idea. Okay.
I have no idea.
I know Taran knows who the person is, so I can't ask him. So yeah.
Well, you'll find out tomorrow. So
yes.
Check that out. Stay tuned
fun.
for that coverage. It should be a lot of fun. At the very least, just to watch Brent run around trying to do this, right? Come on.
Yes, that's what I really want to see.
And then there have been some rumors going out there that we may get some form of celebrity Big Brother. Now, again, these are rumors. I don't think there's anything like remotely credible about this.
I haven't seen any credible site or person saying it, but I'm hopeful we'll get it.
But it's out there and it makes sense.
It does make sense. It seems like it's an easy thing to do. It's one of the few productions that they can actually do during this time, and they just saw that it actually worked with this season of Big Brother. So I don't see why they wouldn't.
Here's the thing about rumors, though. In my experience, when it comes to Big Brother especially, if you hear a rumor and it makes sense, it's not true. You hear a rumor and you're like, what are they doing? That's the real one.
I would believe that. I'd believe that. Sadly.
So don't be too hopeful, but it does kind of make sense. The Circle, I'm sure, will come back at some point. That should be fun. And then Big Brother Canada 9 should be coming back into play in the winter-ish area, winter to spring. And that should be very fun. Arissa Cox, now an executive producer of the show. Very excited.
Yes.
And as we mentioned before, there was news of a new sort of direction that CBS is heading with all of their reality shows, which includes a sort of casting mandate, which should dramatically change the casting makeup of what we see in these casts. And I'm very excited, very sort of interested to see where this goes and the kind of impact that it has. We'll probably get a taste of it first in Big Brother Canada because they are also doing this as part of their own initiative. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Brent? What do you think we get from this?
From the initiative to cast more Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I want to look at really quickly. I wanted to see the press release because I thought like what it said was their goal is 50%. And that's a lot different than a guiding principle is a lot less interesting than a rigid rule. And I would prefer for a rigid rule. To
be fair, I think that's also what like Arissa said. I think she also said like the goal is at least, right? At least.
She said at least. Whereas I feel like I felt like it came for when Arissa said it, I felt like it was like, that's the minimum.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like with CBS, it was like, we're going to try to make it half.
And I'm never gonna.
Does that make sense?
Look, at least they're saying something. You gotta say, like, I mean, yes,
look,
yes, it's not ideal, but
who does? Okay, come on.
Right? No, but I mean, like, I am excited to see that, and I think
agree.
it'll change the seasons moving forward. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the new casting, and maybe this will change the style of casting. Like, we don't know. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Kevin, in his Instagram, he answered a lot of questions, and he talked about the fact that Casey and Josh were bounced from the cast, a couple days beforehand, and they brought in Memphis and Keisha. They were the two alternates. Like, do you realize how different the season is without Memphis and Keisha there? Yeah. I mean, Memphis was the one who created the committee, for God's sake. Like, he was responsible for that. Now, maybe they get together otherwise, but probably not the same exact people. And also, if Casey and Josh were there, that increase, that's 2 more people of color. That's 1 more person from the LGBT community there. It always bugs me that there's always like 1 gay guy, at least they would have had like 1 other person there from the LGBT community. So I would have loved to have seen what that season was. I think we got a little unlucky that they, were bounced from the cast for reasons, we don't know what they were, but they were not there. And then other people took their place, and that really impacted the season. But gosh, I would love to have seen a season with actually like 7 people of color rather than just 5 and 2 people from the LGBT community. Like it would have been a different game. I'll put it that way.
So Mike Bloom's article here about the announcement says the network announced today its new targets for its unscripted programming. No matter what the show, each cast will contain at least 50% contestants who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. The announcement comes after blah, blah, blah. So it says no matter what the show, each cast will contain at least 50%.
That's good.
That's good.
Which is their target. So,
Okay. Well, look,
Whatever
but I
that
would assume.
means.
I mean,
we'll
I don't think
judgment.
they're not make this announcement and then have it
cast
like
less.
40%.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And they'd be like, whoops. Yeah, I feel like
We
if they're making
tried.
this
It was the
announcement,
target.
like,
Fine.
yeah, well, our target's a target. Who cares? Whatever. I feel like this is it's definitely a step forward, and I think it's good for everybody involved. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear they're doing this.
All right. Well, very excited here to move forward and talk about some more Big Brother in the future. I'm optimistic about the potential future of the show, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed the content here. There was a bit of a drought there for a couple weeks. We were potentially going to do this last week, but there's some things happening in the world.
Something going
Taryn
on.
I remember he's like Tuesday, and I'm like, okay, sounds cool. And
Yeah,
then
and I was
it
like, wait a minute.
Right? It was like Sunday night or Monday. I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. It was Sunday. Yeah, I texted and I was like, Taryn, like, no, the election. I said, I know Melissa's going to want to watch the election coverage, and I do too. Like, I want to watch it. So
Yeah.
that would be terrible. I could not have done this while the election.
Oh, no.
Oh my God,
line was
absolutely not.
losing. Oh my God.
I literally
Terrible.
had MSNBC like on literally day and night, and I was staying up till like 2 a.m. every night, just like watching.
stayed
I
up
was
all
so
night on
tired.
election night.
Mhm.
Oh, I was so tired every day. I'm still very tired. I don't feel like I'm not fully over it, like in
Yeah,
terms of
right.
sleep.
It was-
So
oh,
We're making up for it now because
Yes.
we've got a 4-hour podcast here.
boy.
Tomorrow, the Nicole podcast will drop, and then
Yes.
we are aiming for Friday. I plan to talk to Cody about his Big Brother 22 game in detail.
Yay.
So you can look forward to that as well. And then, we'll see where we go from there in terms of interviews. But that is what we have for you in Big Brother 22. All Stars 2. Thank you so much for joining us all season long. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the coverage, even if you didn't enjoy the season. And looking forward to many more. Any final thoughts here, Melissa?
no, I'm just glad that we were able to, kind of put a nice little bow on this season. And I had a great time podcasting with you guys. And I really do hope we're back for Big Brother Celebrity. So, I'm just looking forward to the coverage coming up, hopefully.
Melissa, there's going to be coverage of Sequester too. I really hope you stop by at least once.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about your game.
Yeah, you think Melissa's going to miss a chance to be like,
To
so
be like,
this
wow,
is where Brent
Brent
sucked here.
Yeah, but like
Should've
this
done
is so
this.
embarrassing. He should have done so many different things.
Yes, exactly. I'm really excited too. So I'm excited about that. Also, Taryn, I don't know when you're going to release the interviews between me and you and the other contestants, obviously, but I'm looking forward to those because, again, sitting down and Taryn was there. And Taryn getting to interview me was it took me back to Taryn show days. It was it was a lot of fun. So that's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, but, it was actually a quick story here. The interviews ran late. It started very late for me, and I got a text from Audrey sorry, it's running late. Brent keeps turning a 5-minute interview into a half-hour interview.
Oh my God. Of course. He's like, wait, this isn't a podcast? Normally we talk for 3 hours.
Right? Oh God.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. Thank you guys once again for hanging out with us all summer to fall long this year. I hope the show and us gave you something to do and look forward to in these quarantined times. You can find me on Twitter if you want to. That's where I'll post links to the interviews that I'll be doing and all of that. You can also find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. We've been playing some Among Us on the weekends, which is a social strategy game of its own where you secretly murder people and then try to figure out who's murdering. And I'll also be doing some streams over the course of the off season, just hanging out, playing some games, probably talking Sequester, whatever else, all sorts of stuff there on Twitch. You can find me there, and hit the follow button. You can also find Melissa on Twitter at It's Melissa with three A's. Anything else, Melissa?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
That's about it. I'm on It's Melissa on all social media.
All right. So. And Brent, you can find at One Lucky Gay on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you can also find him playing Sequester in 3 weeks. Right?
I think it was Pia online from the RHAP patron group. She's like, I tweeted like, hey, I'm going to be on Sequester. And she's like, it's going to be the best 15 minutes of our lives.
Yeah. I don't doubt it.
Yes, you can find me at One Lucky Gay.
All right. Thank you guys once more. And we'll see you next time.